wood, and then she went in the house with Colin, and they put a chunk of wood in the stove.
Oh.
She's gonna be 2 on Christmas Day.
She is, yeah. Oh, wow.
And there was a beeping sound, and she said, back up.
Oh, because of your truck.
Yeah, no, it wasn't my truck, it was somebody else's truck.
That's funny, yeah.
She heard it, you know.
Because I have to find the darn thing.
Holy crap, man.
Oh, yeah, they're smart.
Put stuff in front of me, I'm just
William?
going to eat it.
How's William?
Going to preschool,
Yeah,
that whole village,
that's good.
ready for kindergarten next year.
Yep, yep. Oh, yeah, over at, he's in the Head Start program.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent program.
He tried to steal Carolyn's muffin last night.
That's funny.
Well, for God's sakes.
Got it before he could bite into it.
It's cute. I don't miss stacking wood. Head.
Well,
Don't know why.
No.
Well,
24
you
years
get
of
somebody to stack it with, and you can talk, and.
There we go.
Not really. Well, less than that.
Hey, Ted's
Confirm that I got the right one.
I used to, my mom and I used to get
you
into
just
arguments
appeared on the
because we
document.
would start out, my stepdad, my mom and I, and then 10 minutes
the
into
one
it,
with
she'd be like,
11:21, confirmed.
something
Okay,
inside
good.
I need to do. And she'd abandon my stepfather and I.
Bailed out on you.
She would.
That can be passed down to the others.
And we had 4 homes we had to stack wood at. So it was our house, my grandmother's, my stepfather's parents,
houses?
and then his shop. So it was a lot of boards of wood. So.
Do you rake leaves too?
Oh, a lot of people.
I
burn
do.
wood.
Oh, good. Come on over.
I do. I'm not good at it. I have
okay.
I have 2 leaf blowers. So I had this idea that I could strap on both and then blow leaves.
Like having 2 six guns.
It doesn't work that way.
You should have done a video of that one. I would have liked to see it.
Ann, is this out of date? Is this not the password anymore to the Wi-Fi?
I don't know what the password is.
Does anybody know what the password is?
Mine's on Wi-Fi.
Still is the password.
I just tried it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I thought
Erin and I just used the guest account recently, and I think she used that password.
is it Plymouth 2022 or something like that?
Well,
Or-
2020 is what this says.
Maybe you changed it to 2022.
Alright, 2022. That one didn't,
All right, let me try that.
I can't connect either, so maybe
Yeah,
it's too many
I just
people
got dropped out.
connected.
No, I'm connected.
No.
Which one are you connected to, Ted?
I got to check. Oh, I'm actually still connected to the PSU
You're
one.
hooked to PSU.
I'm close enough.
Whatever, I'll tether to my phone.
I'm not gonna argue with it working.
No, I'm surprised it reaches.
I'm not. It's reached me here before, but I know I have gotten on this one.
All right, well, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. Scott, you're going to give us just a quick update on where we're at in the process and what we're doing tonight, maybe a brief what's to come.
Sure. So the budget process started back in August when the department had submitted their budgets to the town manager at the time, Kathy Lowe. And from that point, Kathy did review the budgets. I'm not sure she had the opportunity to meet with each one of the department heads to go through the budgets, but Kathy had made recommendations under the town manager's recommendations. From that point, the advisory budget committee, Mark Halloran and Mike Courier, met with the department heads, with the exception of the highway department, who did not have time to meet with them during that period of time. So the budgets were discussed with each department head through the advisory budget committee. After that status happened is when I joined the team, and on the
Recording in progress.
on the 18th of November, Mike, Mark, myself, and Ann met for about 4.5 hours with regards to what their conversations were with the department heads in the budgets that were submitted, as well as Ann and I taking a look at what Kathy had recommended and going back through that based on the notes that had been submitted by the department head. What you have in front of you tonight is the numbers from the department request, the town manager's recommendation, the budget committee's recommendation, bringing that to you as we did meet with Mike and Mark and come to a conclusion of what we would be submitting and moving forward to yourselves. What you'll see is that over the period of time between the Advisory Budget Committee and Anna and myself, we did reduce the budget by $1,080,947 from what the departments requested. With that said, the overall increase as proposed is $1,818,200. But there are some significant pieces to that increase, and those are that if we had to bond the $1.8 million for the South Main Street Drainage Project, that would be about $250,000 a year payment for that bond. If we bonded the solar array project that we've discussed over the past couple of weeks, that's $100,000 a year to bond that project. The most significant impact on the budget is the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan relates to $1,529,920 of that increase for 23-24. And that's looking at what was put into the capital improvement plan for 23-24. So overall, when you look at the $250,000, the $100,000, and the $1,529,000, that gives you a total of $1,879,920. So you can see that really is more than what the increase of the budget is. I think between Mike and Mark going through the budget, having great conversations with the department heads, I've had a couple follow-up conversations with the department heads, and then the work that Ann has diligently done on looking at the numbers, making sure our numbers are aligned with what we'll have to do for warrant articles and bonding. This is where we sit tonight. So we bring in front of you a budget that the Budget Committee and myself and the department heads move forward with the request.
Did you actually ever meet with the highway department?
Excuse me?
Did you actually ever meet with the highway department at any point?
We have not met with the highway department yet, and I'll just say that as of today, we are full staff with the highway department. We've had some personnel issues that we've been dealing with over the past couple of weeks. And as of next Monday, our last employee will be joining us, so we'll be full staff. So I will say Joe has been busy trying to pick up the slack of what's been going on out there. But we do plan on meeting with Joe prior to coming back in here on December 19th. But as of today, Mary Ann, no.
And who's on the agenda for tonight?
Tonight, Josie kicks off at 5 o'clock, and then Planning and Zoning, June, will be here at 5:15, or on Zoom, and then we have Cemeteries and Recycling at 5:45, Police, Parking, Dispatch, and SRO at 6:15, the Library at 7, and the Ambulance, Fire Department, and Health at 7:15.
Okay, so the highway has a little bit of time still to get
They
their
do,
materials.
and we will meet with him prior to that.
Great.
I don't know, Mark and Mike, if you have anything to add to that, or? Okay.
All right. Do we want to get started on this with Josie? Any other questions for Scott before we move to, Ann, do you want to address yours or at the end?
As long as it's done tonight, I'm fine. Yeah.
We'll hold it to the end because,
That's great.
okay, perfect.
So some of us are looking at paper, some of us are looking at computers.
Yes.
So just so that we're keeping all together, Josie starts on line 40 of the first page. Page 1, line 40. And those of you that are following by computer, your line numbers are not going to be the same as ours.
Well, the good news is
So
on
we
the
tried.
computer, we have a town clerk tab, so
Okay.
Yes,
it's
Perfect.
actually easier.
All right.
way easier.
Rose between two thorns.
Oh. You want to make sure that that's pulled up next to you, please, if you can. Do you have a mic over there? Josie, I'm going to have you push yours over. And we're going to start swapping the mics just so everybody can hear us.
I'm microphone shy.
So,
There's one here. Nope, you're good.
I'm good? Okay. Check, check, check.
It's ants.
Oh, it's ants.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My granddaughter knows how to use the phone. So, Josie, do you have a mic?
I do have a mic.
Okay, everybody's got one? Perfect.
Yes. All right. So it looks like overall, you're asking for, bottom line is about a 7.5% increase.
To the total budget? Yes. Yep.
Anybody from the board have specific questions for Josie?
If you look at the total budget as well, if you look under the town manager and the budget committee, there was a different recommendation there.
Now, there's a clarification. The town manager tab that's in here, are these
Those are the-
notes from the current town manager or the prior town manager?
Prior.
These are Kathy's notes that are in here. Okay.
But if you look at the actual total budget itself, those are the numbers that is being presented to you by the budget committee and the current town manager.
Which do or do not incorporate the previous town manager's.
Some items do, some items do not.
Okay. Just trying to understand how we follow that.
And we did change some of those to what we thought was a
I
little
can
more
go
appropriate.
through those, Zach, if you would like me to.
That would be helpful, yeah.
So if we start off with the town clerk, you can see the department head request was more than myself and the budget committee are recommending. We're recommending the 2.5% increase as designed with the personnel policy and what we have typically done in the past. And the same for the deputy town clerk. And then supervisors of the checklist, that pretty much stays the same. Inspectors of the ballot, we changed a little bit. And the office expense for town clerk, we changed a little bit. And those were based on previous year expenditures that we went through.
And I can see these in the budget committee recommendation column.
Yeah.
There were, let me know when it's okay to jump in.
It is okay to jump in.
Okay. There were some areas I had highlighted. One of them, supervisors of the checklist, it's marked at 3,000. Because we have the town election and then also the presidential primary in that year, their pay for that year, that fiscal year, should actually be reflected as $4,250 that I had put in the budget originally.
Which line item is this, Josie?
This is
51.
supervisors of the checklist.
Line 45.
Yep.
51 if you're looking at town manager recommendations.
President's checklist, though. So that one is,
$4,250 for an annual town election. They each get paid $500. That amounts to $1,500. For a presidential primary, $750 per person. That's $2,250. And then the chairperson, Mary Nelson, gets an additional $500 for her additional work throughout the year.
How many elections next year, Josie?
We have the two, the presidential
Just the two.
primary and then the town election. Presidential primaries are typically at the beginning of the 2024 election
right?
season.
That's what I was
and then
thinking, because
follows.
the budget runs July to July. It's not
Right.
in 23, but it's in the 23 budget.
We will have additional elections that year, but that comes in the next budget cycle.
Yep.
Let's see.
So effectively, you're pushing back on the
4,000.
budget committee's recommendation of 3,000 and suggesting it really needs to be 4,250 based
Yep.
on the staffing you need for elections.
Yeah, and we had talked about that afterwards too, but it was after the fact. We had afterwards when you guys had exited and went into Linda's office, we had called back and I showed you the figures for that. So, yeah. Let's see some of Kathy's notes. I'm not sure which line item it is on your spreadsheet, Zach, but I'm looking at inspectors of ballots.
46.
46.
52.
Those showing low.
I think the logic behind changing that, Josie, from the 2125 down to the 1,500 was the number of ballot clerks that you want is extreme.
It's not, have you seen our elections on the day? I mean, we have people who participate on election day. Prior to 2020, what it looked like is we had the same volunteers every year who worked from 7 to end of the day. That's not a system we want to use anymore. It's not appropriate to have the same eyes on our equipment all day. It's not appropriate because it can lead to mistakes on our official checklist and in other areas. We want to continue recruiting people to get people civically engaged in what is happening in our local democracy in town. And that's to really change it up by creating shifts. Those volunteers we used to have, they no longer wish to work a full day either, especially now that we're in the midst of, even though we're no longer in the pandemic, that kind of started this original issue that we had in the first place, where most of our volunteers didn't want to work a full day or work at all. A lot of them are senior citizens and did not feel safe. So 60 people is actually fairly accurate. We could always use more actually on election day, especially for voter registration. Many of you have participated in that day. It runs smoothly because we have the appropriate number of hands. Now that we have poll pads, of course, the setup hasn't changed with check-in. We still have to have 2 people at each station. But now we have another station. That's where Mark was kindly sitting, marking the official checklist. And that's been wonderful because we do have a more accurate system, one that where poll workers are not stressed as someone is checking in and mismarking the official checklist. So we've found that it's really improved our system. Now, town elections, 25 ballot clerks for a full day. I think that's pretty fair. It's not as extreme as a larger election, but we do need the hands-on, the people to be there present throughout the day. And I really don't want to stick to a system where we have the same people constantly. I don't think that's fair to other people in this community who may want to get involved, and it's also not really great for our systems that we have on election day.
Bless you.
So, and when you say excessive, is that based on hours or number of people?
Just number of people. This is by person.
Okay.
60 people throughout the day is what you're using sitting at your polls.
Right.
Seemed like a lot.
And I think when you are there involved in the election, you notice that it's really not a lot. You have 10 people at voter registration for one shift. You saw the lines on election day, how many people can form. Over 100 people sometimes in line. We only have 10 people at the voter registration line. We're already in a bad place with the Attorney General's office because technically people shouldn't be waiting in line for only maybe 10 minutes up to 15. They don't want any longer.
Is that for voter registration or to vote?
Voter registration.
No, I understand that the lines were for voter registration. The Attorney General criticized us for registration, or he criticized us for voting?
Registration. They don't want I don't have the exact time frame on me, but legally people should not be waiting more than a particular set of minutes to register to vote. Problem is we have a very small polling place, so we can't fit more volunteers than we already have. It would be nice, but logistically it doesn't make any sense on election day. We're tight as it is. We could if we can. The state is very forgiving of that, but to decrease how many poll workers we have, we're going to run into a lot of issues.
And how many people did you register as new voters in this past election?
Couple hundred, I believe. That's a good question to ask supervisors, but I believe it was a couple of hundred.
And are most of those people that were registering new students?
We had a lot of new students, but we also had a lot of new residents. A lot of people are moving to New Hampshire. We've seen an influx of people from, California, Massachusetts, just coming up into our direction. A lot of people from, also from neighboring towns who have made their way to Plymouth. So I think majority were college students, but I think there was also a good mixture of people who are full-time residents coming in to register to vote for convenience.
So you're suggesting that it should not be 1,500, it really needs to be the 2125. Is there any leeway in there, or?
I think the leeway is that having the 2125 there is a good safety net for me. Not every person I get who's a volunteer wants to be paid. That's just a reality. Some people feel like it's their civic duty to be a poll worker, and they are insulted by being asked if they want a stipend. But I can't learn that until afterwards. And then there's other people who will only be a poll worker if they're getting paid. Some people have complained that what we're paying isn't enough. I know other communities do more, but I think it's nice to have an incentive available for people, because if we don't, it's going to put us in a really bad position if we see people refusing to volunteer just for that sole purpose.
I mean, on that point, looking at your 2021 spent versus budgeted, you spent $250 against a budget of $1,000.
Yep. What happens?
Does that mean that in general the ratio is not
Well,
100% and that we should calculate based on something?
I think that's hard to calculate. It's hard to calculate because we encourage people to fill out the W-4. We have that available prior to election day and then also on election day. But ultimately, people need to send that back to us. Now, back in 2021, that was less because we had fewer elections.
But does the ratio, you don't think the ratio holds? Was there something unique about that year that?
I think we just had the town election that year. So this year, coming up in the 2024 cycle, we're going to see an influx in how many people we're going to be paying. There'll be a larger
You think we'll have to
increase.
pay more people for the general election than the town elections?
Well, we're going to have fewer
percentage.
people for town elections.
Well, I know, but that's built into your number already. My question is about the percentage of people that need to be paid. In other words, do you need to do in terms of budget, do you need 100% allocation here and assume that every single person's going to be paid when the history is not the case?
Yeah, I'd rather have 100% there because
I'd
even
rather
if I
not
don't
tax the
spend that,
taxpayers for money we're not
that's
going
going
to
to come back. It's going to come back and offset what's not spent. So I think it's better to plan ahead and project a potential
And that's the
payment.
slippery slope we always get into. Is like, let's allocate more and then, hey, it'll be fine. If we have more, we'll just give it back.
So I think that's the question. I'm fine with it, but if I go over line, I think there has to, over the budget, that budget line, I think there has to be that understanding that,
Well, I mean, but looking at this budget, there's plenty of line items where you did go over.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, as long as you're kind of bottom line balanced,
Yeah.
we were fairly comfortable. I mean, I don't recall ever being upset about.
Yeah, you can go over in a line as long as your total budget is not over.
well, that's the problems. I've always had extra funds in that particular line where if I don't think I've really ever had the tradition of going over budget line in many lines. I think there have been. For poll pads, I went over budget for the election expense line, I believe, if I can
Looks
recall
like
that correctly.
in 21, the election
Yep.
expense line, town clerk fees, publications and dues.
Yep, those went over
postage.
budget, but we had the safety net of the other lines to protect the bottom budget line going over.
Is that good?
Yeah, please, Mark.
I think when we looked at this number, we looked at, just as you said, we look at the law of averages on what really are we going to spend, knowing that, and we weren't, as a budget committee, we weren't looking at the total number of people. We were looking at what are the odds this number is going to be spent based on looking at the entire bottom line and saying, okay, we'll put this number in the budget. Josie goes over by $125. That's not a big deal. There'll be some surplus in some other line items. So the budget committee's request was based on a solid average of what we think people are actually going to cash their check. But in no way did we get into how many bodies she needed.
And that's fine. I'm okay with either approach, but I think there does have to be that flexibility there for me in case I have to go over line. And it's also, while the stipends are there, we're not actively encouraging them to be used. Like, we let people know that they can receive a stipend, but we're not contacting them weekly saying, you haven't turned in your W-4 yet into the office. So,
Are there other line items here we should discuss?
let's see.
The other difference is the office expense town clerk, which
Yep.
is line 49.
Yep, I'm trying to see how much that was decreased to. 300, yep. I mean, that's not going to make a huge difference. I mean, if that's the cost of ink, they're $300, but I have to print off registration. So if I did have to go over budget, then I imagine that would be fine if it pertaining on to, what I'm spending the money on, of course. If it's ink and I need it, I would expect that would be fine.
And I think other than that, Zach, the lines match the continuous down to the total.
What does the board, those are 4 items we just talked about. What does the board think about those items? We agree with the budget committee,
Yeah.
with Josie?
I think I would agree with Josie as far as, kind of like making sure that she has the cushion to pay additional staff. But
You think she should have the cushion on the staff? So we'll go back to that one specifically. So this is inspectors of the ballots. It's either 2125, which is what Josie requested, or 1500, which is what the budget committee. So a difference of $625. Marianne, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Josie as well on that. It's $600.
My opinion is we've got to cut everywhere we can, but Ted, what do you think?
I'm one that would lean toward if we have shown in the past precedent where there was enough money left over in the budget to accommodate an overage, that we don't necessarily need to give more.
The last general election, 1819, right? We spent $800 in that line.
has it gotten tougher or easier?
For recruiting people?
I don't know. The 2020 election was a heck of an election.
Did you say 2018 or 2020?
1819 year
18-19 year?
for the 2020 election.
It's hard to tell. We tell people when we recruit them, that's an incentive that they can be paid. But whether people
And I don't think
are
we're
gonna-
suggesting that you don't have the incentive.
whether people follow through on that, I can't control it. Having that option, though, is appropriate in my opinion. But I also understand that we're not meeting that full amount in the budget. So it could be decreased. It's just if we have to
Sounds
go
like
over
we're
budget
split.
because
Neil,
people
what's your thinking?
I was looking at the deputy town clerk.
Let's get to that in a second. We're on inspectors of ballots.
Oh.
Do you think that Josie should have the buffer for extra? Or should we reduce it to a level that we think will cover the amount of clerks that she needs based on the history?
Actually,
Buffer or history?
Yeah, Julie just indicated that she could split the difference. So.
I'm flexible with it. It's just if I need to go above, which I'm not saying is the likelihood. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But if someone turns in their W-4 that election, I have that obligation to pay them because I've already promised it. So,
And we agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $600? And you think it could play out in the
I
budget?
think it'll average off. I think there are some people who don't take a check, some.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people to get through, so I don't want us to overanalyze this 325, but we need, as a board consensus, are we at 1,500 or are we at 2125? I think Ted and I are at 1,500. Either of you change your perspective? Neil, you haven't weighed in.
I guess I'll go along with you.
Okay. So we're going to put that one at 1,500. The supervisor of the checklist, the other one we debated, I think that one's necessary for staffing because we're going to pay them.
Yeah.
So
We'll
I
increase
think
that.
4,250, consensus on that. The other budget committee recommendation was to bring the town clerk and clerical down to the percentage increase that we're offering through the union contracts to match that.
Agreed.
I agree.
Okay. Were there any other items? Oh, there was one other. The clerical.
Nope.
Let's see.
Is it office expense?
Office expense, yes, that was the other one.
That's only coming, sorry, I say only, but it's coming down $129.50. From 12,129 to 12,000.
Look at a different line,
Line 50 for us.
line 55.
Yeah, the
By
one-
5.
One that's
So this was going
at
from,
town clerk's fees.
this was going from 3,300 to 3,000. It's a $300, right?
Okay,
We comfortable with the 3,000?
yes.
For office expense, yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Any objection from the board?
No.
Okay. Any other things that we should discuss? And I'm annotating these in the sheet.
Josie, we'll discuss your outlay towards the end of the next meeting.
Okay.
So if there's any concerns at all, we'll let you know about your trailer. But I don't foresee that they're...
Yep.
So June is online, unless you have anything
Yeah.
else.
Did you want to go over my deputy's line?
No, I guess it's all right.
Oh, sorry, Neil, I meant to get
It's
back to
okay.
you.
I guess, one thing is, and we did talk about this, moving forward, we can have a meeting about my salary individually. I know the board says 2.5 or 2% increase across the board, but I do know that there are other employees who are receiving more than 2%, who have been with the town fewer years and are at a not as high a grade as I am in my position. And I am hopeful that in the future with conversations, the board will take into consideration that I did carry experience into the position. I do have valuable educational experience and am now a certified state supervisor. And then also the additional increase in services that we've had in the office, seeing an 85% increase to marriage license applications, a 30% increase to vital requests. We've been supporting other towns, which has been an increase to our revenue. I've worked with the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and I'm hoping to continue looking at evaluating the other large businesses in town to see how we can increase our revenue there. And we already talked about that discussion of, I think, a few months ago regarding their trucks and use on the roads. And then also additional hours and the election training. I think this is all very valuable for the town. If you look up Town of Plymouth and look at the Google reviews, it talks about the town clerk's office and how wonderful it is. And I think we've made some great changes since 2020. And I'm just hoping at some point we can take that conversation maybe more seriously.
And I think I've said to you, Josie, we've had a couple of conversations on this, that we'll be meeting throughout the year.
Yep.
And setting expectations moving forward. So I'm not saying those discussions can't come forward, but 14% increase in 1 year is a lot of money.
I did, and I talked to Ann about it, and I've been with the town for 6 years. It was recommended that I just put the midpoint there because I've been, at that point next year, I will be with the town for 6 years. And midpoint, we don't have to go there. That's fine. There are other employees who are already there who have been here for fewer years than I am, different grades. But again, if we can look at what we're doing in the office and what value that's brought in, and of course the experience, I think, is a benefit as well. So.
And I don't disagree, and I think the meetings that we'll have
Yep.
monthly and quarterly will give me some more areas of expertise or understanding of what your office does.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions for Josie and elections?
Mike?
I just want to say that I think Josie's been doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Neil.
And I don't think anybody would argue that. When people come in, there's always a smile on the face, there's always a warm greeting, there's compassionate shown to those that are coming in for certain different types of events that take place. So you do a great job, Josie, and Aaron does as well.
Well, words are kind, but I'm looking forward to future meetings to discuss some of these ideas, so.
Sounds good. All right. Who's next?
June.
June is
Talking about
online.
planning, zoning, and land use. And for those of you on paper, you're looking at page 3, line 113. Because she's on Zoom.
I know, but for my camera, I
Oh,
get these
okay.
guys too, I can't get them on camera.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Jen?
What do you need to know? Tell me.
June's ready for dinner.
So Zach, with regards to this budget, the differences that you'll see between the department head request and town manager and budget committee, the community planner number one, and you'll see building inspector, a change there, as well as office expense for land use enforcement. Otherwise, the budgets match as you move down through the columns.
So there was a little kind of silence in that, what I heard. So I think you said, Scott, that the office expense, right? You, from my recommendation, it was reduced by $1,000, it looks like.
Went from 3,000 to 1,500, June.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that I had done a pretty big increase there from previously 1,000 up to 3,000 to cover copies and cell phone reimbursement is the primary reason for that. Previously, cell phones and copies have been covered by Selectman's office, I guess, and then now with the new copy machine, we use a lot of copies as we have, fairly large planning board and zoning boards, and we have a fairly strong need still for paper at those meetings, and sometimes with plans and applications. Zach and Neil, I know you're familiar with what we do for copies for the board members. So now that each department is actually being charged that, and that just started this past summer. So that $1,000 we have for this fiscal year is, we already had spent a fair amount of that, and I don't know what the latest copying numbers were yet. But anyway, so I think and then the cell phone, there wasn't ever a line item for that, and it was, I guess, somehow incorporated within, where a previous employee actually had a town paid for cell phone, which I was not even aware of, but doing a reimbursement basis for about half the cost of a cell phone for 2 employees needs to go somewhere now, since it's not being covered in the general select board, selectman's office. Not select board, selectman's office budget, as it historically, as my understanding has been. So when those kinds of changes happen without, sort of our awareness of it in the previous budgeting, we have to kind of up that number. So that's why I had asked for the big increase there on the office expense. So in essence, you're saving it. You should be saving it elsewhere in the select board budget. And I don't know where that is. Ann would have to advise about that on the copies and the cell phone. You're just kind of moving it from selectman's office into.
Yeah, looking at the selectman's office, though, it appears that we're increasing that same budget line by $5,000 under the select board.
Right.
So seeing it increase on both is a little surprising.
We are paying, again, every department is paying for their own paper products right now. Now, the former employee who was in that planning position, some of that would come out of building inspector, some would come out of PBTV, because that's where the individual worked prior to coming forward, so the budgets were all split. What June's attempting to do here is to combine them. However, increasing by $2,000 we thought was a lot for that combination.
So
and right now, I think we have, June, are you still going to submit for your cell phone use? Yes, this year through December. And then we'll have one employee unless you fill that position. So there was some thought of position changes and what's going on, but.
So Scott and I are actually planning to meet tomorrow to talk about some of the staffing. So we can have a better sense of that. We haven't had a chance with recent changes and events to fully talk about the staffing, but I'm trying to find an email or something from you, Ann, where about the copies was a big one in terms of the copying do you remember, have you done a copy? Oh, here we go, copy, it's just for the month of July. Planning, well, we did quite a few copies, so we were charged $32, so, let me see. You're looking at about $450 or so, just kind of for the planning side, out of that amount, so. We don't really know because we just started coding the charges to each department like in June or July. Whereas before, I guess it was, I don't know how it was handled before, just sort of suddenly came in, but I've got $1,000 this year and I've already spent, and this year, half of that easily will probably just go to copies this year, where it wasn't ever covered by that.
But I think there's other lines within the budget that they do not spend that they can compensate that additional money.
Should we adjust those line items then?
You'd have to go down through every single line, and I'm not prepared, Zach, to answer those right now. The advertising.
And the other thing, we don't have any place to put mileage, except we've been putting it in that office expense account. And now that COVID's, in a different spot, we have been doing a little bit more in-person meetings. We've had to attend a few Lakes Region Planning Commission meetings recently for support for the 10-year plan grant application, support for Route 3 and Route 25 corridor study meetings that Joseph and I, or Joseph went to one of them, and we both went to another. Joseph attended a Planning Commission meeting and when Bill couldn't go. So, getting compensated for the mileage for those types of trips, does make a little bit of a difference too. And there's no mileage account line item. So we've been putting that under sort of general office expense. And I would expect, I think it's important for us to be out and about, the more, as the world's kind of demanding more in-person meetings sometimes to meet quorums, especially like Transportation Advisory Committee meetings and things like that. And
Just for
maybe
an example,
eventually
sorry, June. Just for an example, they were able to give back $4,700 2 years ago. Not the year that we're in, but last year. So I think, we are attempting to budget and do better at our budgeting. But just by removing that, was it $1,500, I don't think is going to make that huge of a difference throughout the budget. And they know that they can overspend one line as long as they compensate it throughout. And that has been the theory over the years. So I think that was pretty much the biggest change that they had made.
Just that and the advertising, right?
Advertising, yeah. So they took $2,000 total out of this budget of the department's requests. And they
So I can speak to the advertising, that one of the comments there I see was only $760 spent in the previous budget, but the previous staff had basically stopped doing newspaper ads. State law no longer requires that we have to do ads for public hearings for planning board and zoning board applications, but our boards are expecting that, put it that way. Well, legally, maybe we don't have to, we can stop, but we need to, we've had complaints from citizens that say we don't see the ads in the Record Enterprise anymore. So it was kind of in response to that, when we have public hearings two public hearings usually for zoning amendments, planning board applications regularly, zoning board applications. We never know how many applications we're gonna get. But remember, that is offset by revenue, but we need a place to put it, to charge it to it. So if we overspend because, every time we do an ad for an application, we get the revenue, but that goes to the general fund, so you don't see it really as an offset at that line item. So we have to make sure we have enough in there. And like I said, you can't go by what was previously spent, because we're doing a different practice now in response to what the board members and citizens have asked for, and keeping good practice with keeping our citizens, engaged and notified by putting ads regularly into the Record Enterprise, our local paper.
So we're looking at a decrease of, looks like $2,300 from that fund, which is planning and zoning. Land use, We're going from 31,000 to 27,000, and that was as a recommendation of the building inspector and also our town manager. So those are the two.
Yeah, so let's address those each individually. First of all, what's the board think on the office expense line? 3,000 is what's been requested. Budget committee, town manager are recommending 1,500.
I agree with the 1,500.
Yeah.
That's enough then. So 1,500. Anybody want any comment on that, or we're good? So I'm going to type 1,500 here.
It seems like we're certainly going to go an additional 5, just kind of based on July figures. So I would say
Yes.
the 2 as opposed to the 15. Just throwing that out there.
So the prior actual expense was 500 against a budget of 1,000. So even going to 1,500
Right,
is
that's true. Good
effectively
point.
adding
Yeah,
extra
good point.
$1,000.
Yep, you're right.
Okay, so the other line item is there's a question. Sorry, flipping back and forth between tabs here.
Advertising, I think, is actually.
Advertising was the next one. Advertising is recommendation from the budget committee is 1,500, and the department request is 2,000. We heard June speak about why. I'd be tempted to roll the dice on this one too.
Me as well.
Yeah, if we don't have to.
Sounds like 1,500. Okay, so we're going to take 1,500 on that one as well. Advertising expenses. Oops.
Then we go into land use. Again, that's, June had put numbers in here. However, there was comments made by
Uh,
Scott as the building inspector.
So
One second, just so I can close out planning and zoning. Is the board comfortable with all other budget committee recommendations in this section?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, now let's do land use.
Sorry, I was just trying to move you along.
I know. I just want to make sure we're clean on each one.
So you have this one here, the department had originally had asked for 36,898. However, after moving Scott into the position he's in now, we were able to make some substantial cuts, bringing that down to 27,058, and still having funds in there to pay a building inspector, code enforcement officer.
Scott, do you feel confident about being able to serve the needs for land use with this significant reduction?
Yes.
Any other questions about land use? Sounds like board all seem comfortable with that recommendation? All right. Good.
Can I just add one thing? Just want to make sure the budget committee in particular may have this information. I know, I think Scott had some of it in a recent town manager's report, but, you know, the last, I don't know, since springtime, so maybe 8 months or so, Joseph and I have both been working on a number of grant applications. So awarded, you know, stormwater asset management grant of $30,000. That's 100% covered by the state DES. We were successful with a culvert flood risk assistance grant for design work for the Loon Lake Road culvert. This was a special pot of money, so we got $51,893 for that. And then we just recently were awarded $134,000 through the Invest New Hampshire program for a housing opportunity program grant. And then our efforts within the Lakes Region Planning Commission for another project into the 10-year plan for some work on North Main Street and by the Armory, some road alignment issues and sidewalk, adding in sidewalk from there on up towards Foster Street for about 4.6 million. We've made it through the first stage and it was successfully endorsed by the Planning Commission. So then it goes on to DOT. So it's a 2-year process to get that finalized into the next 10-year plan, which should be, I think, summer of 2024. But at least we made it from the Regional Planning Commission, who kind of gets an allocation. They agreed that our project was one of the 2 that they were going to pass on. So I'm hopeful that that will work. So we've got some, hard money, about almost $216,000 that really is around infrastructure and the housing work. And then maybe in a few years, for construction, not until mid 2030s, but hopefully that roughly $4.6 million or so for that Main Street work. So we've been working hard on that things. I just wanted to give that as a positive report to helping the community and the infrastructure work that needs to get done.
Nice job.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, which is our next?
Thanks, June. Are you all
Thank you,
set?
June. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
So those of you that are looking at paper, page 4, line 162. Jim, where'd you go? Oh, he's back there.
Me?
You're on.
I have to step up.
And this is going to be cemeteries.
Cemetery.
And you also have a cemetery trustee here. Mark is a cemetery trustee.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jim.
How's it going?
Good.
So the department's request, $73,311, comes in at the same thing as what the town manager and the budget committee recommended as well.
So you're
The original,
recommending no change.
no change is what they're recommending. That's correct.
100.
That's easy.
Is there surprised to see no recommended changes? Always it's like, did Jim just nail this so perfectly?
He
or
did, and with our other 2 trustees, I think we have a long-term plan for really keeping all of our cemeteries in good shape. This year, as you know, we had the $9,000 for tree trimming, which is more of a liability issue than it was anything else. It was those pines that run along, I guess, the west side of the cemetery. And so that tree work will be getting done. We're sort of taking that money this year and putting it into buying a new lawnmower. The other lawnmower is a 2006, was that the year? And it's more than met its
done its
work
job.
for us. And then perhaps roll some money next year as we begin to look at fencing at all of our cemeteries. There's barbed wire in some areas that we need to get. So what we're trying to do is over a period of 3 to 5 years, really bring up the condition of the cemeteries. But in terms of the work being done by the men and overseen by Jim, I think he's doing a terrific job. The guys are doing a terrific job. So I think, it's just a plan. It's coming into shape.
Mark, you're a trustee, right?
Yes.
Good.
The only issue that's out there, and I will just tell you the trustees have thrown around a little bit, was the potential of having a green cemetery in the future. But we haven't moved forward because we really don't feel comfortable having a green cemetery within an existing cemetery because our records at times can be not as useful as they could be. So we don't want to run into something that we don't need to run into. So, but we would be looking at potentially a piece of land the town already owns in some area and develop that into a green cemetery, but that's out there in the discussion stages right now.
Any questions from the board?
No.
roughly an 11% increase on this budget line item, which is high, but it's a small budget line item, and adding, a new mower is really what kind of forces the issue on that. Given that that mower is 16 years old, it's probably not unreasonable to think that it needs a replacement.
For how much it gets used, they should be replaced like every 6, unless they're maintained. So if we maintain this one a little better than they did the last one, we might get longer out of it.
You're gonna get longer than 16 years out of the next one?
Well, we'll try.
It seems like they did a pretty good job to get 16.
I think it probably should have been replaced a while ago.
10 years.
Yeah. But if you can maintain it, maybe you get more than 6 or 8 years,
Sure.
Keep going.
Any other thoughts from the board on this one? Anything? Are we good with the budget committee's recommendation of accept the request?
Yes.
See a consensus.
The next line item you're going to be looking at is page 11, line 474, starts the recycling center. The manager had asked for 809, 239. The budget committee and town manager are changing that to 602, 608. One of the biggest changes there is we're taking the building out because we're working on that this year. And that was
48,000.
148,000
So we moved that into this
into
fiscal
this
year.
fiscal year with the ARPA funds, yes.
Is that the only change between the request and? No.
No, there
Yes.
was other changes as you go down through. We did split out the foreman now has his own line, where in prior years he was actually in the regular wages line, so that got split out a little bit.
Hence the difference.
A lot of different, big difference there.
Yeah.
The office expense, I believe that the recommendation was from 3,400 down to 3,000.
Yep.
Actually, there was an increase on the electricity from 6,000 to 7,500, so.
Probably
kinda
see
took
that pattern in most of the buildings that.
You will, yep.
Same with this heating expense I see is also up.
Yep.
I will say one thing, Zach, is one thing I've been working on this week is to get the total number of gallons used for heating oil as well as propane and fuel for vehicles, and being able to go out to RFP for that. I met with the town of Campton last week, and they actually entered into an agreement with Pemi Valley Fuels in a consortium with the town of Thornton. So I'll be traveling out there Wednesday to see if we can piggyback on that consortium that they have at a discounted rate of what we're paying currently today for heating oil and propane.
That's great.
So I think we're moving in a direction to see if we can't do something to make that more sustainable and paying a lower cost.
Do you think that we'll have any information about that prior to setting this budget, or is
I'm
that?
hoping so. I think Colleen's just about got the data
Yep, we're waiting for
complete.
one department, one vendor.
So we
Sorry.
could see a review of these numbers if that comes in substantially.
I'm in
substantial
hopes,
savings.
yeah,
Great.
because once I have that information, I'm gonna go out to Pemi Valley Fuels. I mean, it's a local distributor, and they worked with Campton and Thornton to come in with a price, so I don't know why they wouldn't allow us to jump on board where we're delivering right in town.
Will that cover like equipment fuel too, or just heating?
Looking at equipment fuel as well, not for Pemi Valley, but
Okay.
we're looking at that with Irving, to see what we can do for a better deal.
Okay. Because we have Dead River for our
Right.
off-road and then Irving for our propane.
Okay.
Vehicle maintenance and repairs, I see that line item's down from 4,000 to 1,000.
Is that because of their new equipment?
Yeah, we're getting rid of a pickup, so we'll have a brand new, got
Gotcha.
a brand new 2021 pickup, so that shouldn't need,
Didn't need much more than some oil changes.
it doesn't go anywhere.
He's
Use
also,
it to plow, and it comes down here.
also looking at a brand new, or a newer skid steer as well in this
Is
budget.
that in the capital improvement
is.
portion?
Yep.
One thing we're looking at with the skid steer, there are some grants available for electric skid steers, but you have to keep them in service for 3 years. So Joseph has been reviewing that, brought to our attention by the planning board with regards to that grant that's available. So Joseph is researching that to see if we can't tap into that for that purpose.
I've done some research on the Bobcat, they're like 2 years out. I'm getting one of those.
Getting one of the electric,
Yeah.
okay.
All electric, and if you run them at 100%, they're only good for about 4 hours on a charge, and it's a 10-hour charge. So,
Okay.
I don't know the rest, but they're about 2 years out to get one, and he sent me a link on the other one that he looked at, and I sent an email about more information on it, see how long they go.
Perfect. I think we vet it out and see what the best case
Just see
scenario
what
is
they
for
do.
us.
Yep.
But at least we've researched it and done our due diligence.
Yep. Makes sense. And then I see another, the the uniforms line has a reduction here as well.
Yes.
He went back to the department, and the department actually recommended a change in that line.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you need $2,500 for uniforms. I don't think, I mean, we only had $1,000 in our building maintenance budget. And we got $2,500 in uniforms.
It should look good.
That's just me.
Makes sense. Anything else we want to inquire about here? It looks like, okay. Yep.
Increased the equipment maintenance from 5 to 8.
Yep.
Because we have 3 skid steers and
Yep.
it takes a lot to maintain them.
I'm going back up to the staffing. So this, we've moved the foreman, out of the regular wages line into a standalone line.
Correct.
And then we must have added some significant additional costs to that line so that there's not a negative 51,000. So we're adding staff? Are we converting part-time to full? What's going on in the regular wages line?
So the regular wages line, that is 3, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 full-timers,
Well, no, that'd be 2.
2 full-timers,
Full-timers and a part-time.
and the part-time's in a different line.
Okay, part-time, yeah.
However, the person that's on the recycling center manager is not here for 6 months, so you're going to be using more of your part-time hours up there, so that's why that got increased. So the part-time hours could become full-time.
But the recycling manager line isn't gonna be tapped for the full 60.
For the full year,
So why are we budgeting
Should
for a
we-
full year?
because if he does come back, I mean, right now, we know that he has orders through December, but if he gets released to come back, we have to have money somewhere to pay him.
But wouldn't you have that money in the regular wages where you're trying to cover for him? I mean,
Good.
effectively, you're increasing your wage cost. According to this, you're increasing our wages cost by $68,000. So that, I mean, I get if that's covering for that absence, but we should have a savings from the absence to offset or not budget for the new and use the, you know what I mean?
I think safely, I mean, and we talked about this a little bit with how we could do this, but really not knowing when the individual on military leave would come back, is I think conservatively, we could cut that line by $20,000, the 51,000, and
Good.
still be safe in the event that he returned. That would be my recommendation if we wanted to go that route.
That would be good. That would take that increase down from 43,000 to 23,000.
Correct.
And that reflects reality a lot better than, because we don't want to charge the residents for an expense that we know we're not going to have the full expense of.
And even if he came back after December, we'd still have funds there available for our commitment that we have. So I think we could reduce that to, even if we reduce that down to 30,000, 30,000.
Which one would we reduce, the regular wages or the recycling
We
center manager?
reduce the foreman from 51,168.
The manager.
I mean, the manager, I'm sorry.
From the 68 down to 30 is what you're recommending?
No, I thought we were gonna reduce this recycling foreman down.
Well, you wouldn't reduce the recycling foreman because
He's being paid out of the manager's line right now.
he's getting paid out of the
We moved
manager.
him up.
That's why I'm saying the foreman.
I guess it doesn't
Okay.
matter which line it is, but
Pick one, yeah.
30,000, I just want to I want to reduce one of them by 30,000.
Take it. Zach, which one?
I don't care.
Roll the dice.
So to reduce that by 20,000.
I'm sorry, 20,000. Which one? Do you want it to be the foreman
Do
one?
the foreman.
I do the foreman, yeah,
Because the role of the manager is happening, so I would do the foreman.
which isn't in the role right now.
So 31,168.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And we'll adjust all the other benefits as we need to.
31,168. Yeah, does the board agree? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I agree.
Yep.
Yes.
Reduce because we don't.
Jim, did you understand what they just did?
I think, kind of.
Okay.
I'll figure it out.
All right.
I've
Well,
got this far,
okay, good job.
figuring it out.
I don't think we're going to leave you short. I think
No.
we're just tightening some numbers there.
Yep.
We just don't want to
Well,
Hope you
overbid.
guys not show up. I'll say-
Right.
Look, if we're not paying them, I don't think they will. So you don't even have to tell them.
No, they would.
That's impressive. Anything else for recycling, sanitation?
I didn't have anything else.
I mean, with that, it puts your increase just around 4%, which is not unreasonable given everything. Yeah,
Which will be less once we adjust every other line that we need to.
good point when all the benefits and things
Yeah.
adjust.
And we felt strongly that the recycling center had not really been taken care of over the last few years, and it was time for their turn. So we wanted to make sure that was, particularly with the wall as it was, and equipment that they might need, it makes it a little more, a little easier to do the job.
I will say I was up visiting with Jim last week or the week before, and there was a significant difference on the maintenance of that facility today.
Yeah,
He's done a good
I
job. I appreciate that, Jim.
Great job.
definitely echo that I've been nothing but happy with the job Jim's been doing over there. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That means a lot.
And he's there every time I come.
He wasn't there on Sunday. I think he finally got a
See
day
him
off.
every time.
That Sunday's my day off.
I know. Usually you get called in on your day off, and I see you anyway.
Unless it's short, then I show up, so,
I know.
It's good you only get one day off, right?
yeah, just one day, Sunday.
I have
We
a
appreciate that.
Yeah.
How are
Neil.
you making out with the mattresses and the dumpsters?
Good.
Because there was an issue a while back.
Yeah, we don't get that many anymore. I mean, from the homeowners.
So it's working out
It's
better.
working out, yep.
So the only other item under sanitation is the Pemmy-Baker solid waste district dues. Jim really doesn't have anything to do with that except part of the department. So 4709 are their dues for the year. And that is going to be on line 523 if you're.
And it looks like that's unchanged from prior year.
Unchanged.
Perfect.
And that, I think, might go down because they're re-evaluating population. 'cause it
Every
goes on
town,
population.
yeah.
Because we're part of a district, there's 18 other towns.
So it could go down.
Could go down,
Minimally.
not much,
You know,
but
every couple $100 matters. I think we're good with Jim. Yes?
Yep, I am.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jim.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be back tomorrow.
We hope so.
Thank you. Had an accident on that.
Okay, just making sure. All right, so the police department starts at line 196, page 5. We can make room. So their budget, as requested, was, I'm just looking at the police department now. 928,967, and that was reduced to 1,873,732. With one of the big significant increases being overtime.
And an additional police officer.
Yes, there is an additional police officer. I was looking at cuts. You're looking at increases, yep.
So I can just give you a quick overview of, we went line item to line item to see where we could reduce, and we reduced quite a bit or tried to stay at the same. Obviously, some things that we could not change or, obviously keep the same was fuel for, obviously, vehicles, the electric for the PD. I mean, those are the things that have increased for everybody, and it wasn't anything that we could try to save in. But everywhere else, if we could save, we did. We looked at past spending, and if we could keep it at the same, we kept it at the same. A couple of things we did reduce in, we used to have a few part-timers. Now we only have 2 part-timers, and they haven't worked in over a year. And we see that everywhere. You just don't have part-time help anymore, and it's tough. But so we reduced that line item. Tried to offset, so what we're looking to do is to add an additional patrolman. Just some back history. In 2002, when I was hired here in the town, I was actually the first 10th officer here in Plymouth. So over 20 years, we've increased up to 12 officers, but one of those officers is assigned to the schools. What is it, 70%, I think the schools pay for? So in reality, in 20 years, we've added 1 additional patrolman on the street. And the town's grown, our calls for service have increased. Burnout is real. Our guys are overworked. So we're gonna try to request an additional officer to help some of that burnout. So to offset that a little bit, we looked at our budget to see where we could save to help hopefully achieve that.
The first significant cut, I think, that we had talked about a little bit, was the patrol grant. They had budgeted for the grant itself, and what we have been doing a lot lately is, as we get these grants, we hold public hearings, which allows us to increase the bottom line and the budget itself, so we don't have to add funding to the lines for those grants. The only problem that you may have there is if you have an offset. Like some of the grants have a $6,000 or $3,000 offset on a $10,000 grant, so you'd have to find that somewhere in your budget. But I think that's the price of getting these grants sometimes. We have to find that additional money in there.
Yeah, so every year we try to apply for highway safety grants, and those help us with DWI patrols, speed enforcement, distracted driving, seatbelt enforcement. So every year we try to apply for those through the state, and usually we're awarded them. So that's the majority of the grants that we do for the patrol side. But yeah, like I said, the only things we really did increase on are things that we really can't really do anything. Cybersecurity, our IT company suggested that we increase our security, so that did increase just a little bit.
Was there something that Scott was gonna work on for, like, town-wide cybersecurity protection, or?
Right, we have a
It's a
meeting
different item, though.
next week with our IT vendor, to have a conversation, and I think that contract expires 25, Ann? We're locked into it until
24, 25,
2025, I think. But to start those conversations, I've requested some RFPs from other towns with regards to their IT services and consultant services, so I think when we go out, we will go out in totality to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. But like I said, we've got 1.5 years left in the contract we have.
Yeah, currently the police department contracts with a different vendor than what the town hall has.
Yeah.
But I believe the fire department has the same IT vendor as we do.
Okay.
I think ultimately what Scott's trying to do is to get all the town departments in one IT company, which would make sense.
Yeah, I
So
think
we
the
have this-
library has a separate one as well,
Yep, Diane's
Yeah.
saying yes.
so.
There should be some economies of scale there.
Absolutely.
So any of the changes that they made to the budget that you're looking at, from your budget to the budget committee that you would ask the board to reconsider?
So the one thing I'm seeing here from the budget committee that's significant is a reduction of overtime.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. So right now is suggested to reduce it by $40,000. So that's obviously a huge decrease. And adding it, if it wasn't add an additional officer, I don't think that we're going to be able to reduce it by $40,000. So in the union contract, how it words is that we can't adjust scheduling to avoid overtime. So that's one of the big things that we can't adjust. And there's other things that we have to pay for overtime. Currently, right now, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights are really busy with the university students. University Police Department is down several officers. We're seeing that obviously with more calls for service for us. So reducing it by $40,000 is quite a bit. I think we could probably reduce it maybe by $20,000 if we were to get that additional officer.
And I think, if I can, Zach,
yeah,
just real
please.
quick, and I think Alex makes a good point there. And, knowing the hiring cycle for a new officer, he's most likely gonna hire somebody who's uncertified, that will have to go to the 16-week academy, so still going to have to fill some of those shifts. So I think splitting the difference between the 140 to 120 is a good decision.
Yeah, so it's very difficult now to actually hire somebody that's already certified. We've gone through it. A lot of agencies around here have gone through it. Even to hire somebody that's brand new, it's difficult. So, but yeah, more than likely it's going to be somebody that needs to go to the academy. And so, and unfortunately, if we do lose somebody, we're going to have to pay, obviously, to cover those shifts too. So.
And you'll still have a new officer coming out of the academy.
Yeah, we still have, so he would go in January, so.
16 weeks
for
out,
16
you'll have
weeks.
somebody coming out who still will need some additional training.
And then a training after additional, yes.
And then you'll have if this officer is approved, you'll have another officer going through the academy, which is an additional 16 weeks.
Exactly.
Our recommendation, Mr. Chairman, was a starting point. So if it's 20, we're not hung up with that.
No.
How are we doing this year on overtime? Do you have, am I asking for a number that's uncomfortable, or?
Nope.
'Cause I'm looking at the 2021 number, and the expenditure on it's really, really low. So I'm just trying to understand,
with
is it,
COVID
have we gone
and the
back up here?
restrictions of what the university put on their students, we saw
You're just
obviously
slower on the
huge
evenings.
difference.
Totally makes
There are
sense.
no restrictions, and it's been busy.
Yeah, that's,
Absolutely. And the other thing is that You know, with the university PD being low staffed, well, obviously we see a difference in that too.
Alex,
So-
with UPD being low staffed, are they paying you for extra services at all?
Sometimes, not all the time.
So I met with the university today. I met with Marlon, President Burks, and Tracy, and we had a great conversation. And the next meeting we're going to have is Nate, Alex, Steve, Marlon, Tracy, Don, and myself to really talk about how much can we sustain as a town in providing police coverage. It's fine if we have a detail that's available and they're requesting the detail in advance and we can fill that shift. I think that's great. The things that we can't sustain is when we get a call in the afternoon saying, we don't have anybody available, can you cover the calls on campus? That means the duty officer is covering not only the normal patrol, but also covering any 911 calls that come in on campus. So if we're down on Route 3 South and something has happened and the officer's tied up and we get a 911 call on campus, the only thing we could do was call for mutual aid from Ashland, Campton, Holderness, but that takes time. That's not sustainable for our police department. So we are going to meet. Marlon's going to be setting up a meeting so we can have further conversations on that of what is sustainable for both agencies to provide police coverage for the university and the town.
And even if they said that, all right, we're gonna put a detail officer every time that they can't cover, that is gonna burn our guys out too.
Well, what I was thinking there is if there's enough demand coming from the university for coverage, we could use that as a justification to have another officer.
If they were willing to pay for it?
I
Yeah.
was gonna say if they're
Okay.
willing to pay.
If they're willing to pay for it, because they're obviously not paying for their own people now because they don't have them. Well, if they shift that to us and we're covering it, it's reasonable to expect them to compensate us for that extra burden that we're taking on that they're not.
And I think that's a conversation we'll have.
And were you able to get that number?
47.6 is what you've spent.
47.6, and we're shy of the midpoint.
Yeah.
So we're on
About
track to
60%
spend
left.
about
100.
110? That's still way below the 140 that's budgeted.
But don't forget, so that pays for sick leave. I mean, people can get sick, there's leave time. I mean, those are all shifts that need to be filled at overtime rate.
Do those security officers on campus do anything other than just,
So they can't do police services.
Right.
They can do unlocks,
okay,
Direct
check
traffic,
doors,
right?
direct traffic, write parking tickets, but not police services.
all right. So they wouldn't respond to a 911,
They will absolutely not respond. Nope.
okay.
I mean, one thing we did talk about today was there's some concern on Highland Street with the number of pedestrians that are crossing, you know, the campus at around noontime. So, you know, there's warning signals up there. There's some lighting that we can, I've talked to the university about if they can help us put some additional lighting up there. But also, that's one thing is having the Campton Safety Services Officer out there directing traffic around those times to get people across the street safely and make sure vehicles
Yeah,
are
they used
stopped.
to have a Plymouth, or a
They
university
used to
PD.
do it, yeah.
They
so-
used to do it.
The other thing I want to point out is that, you know, obviously, we did the matrix to see if we're a good-sized PD, if we're understaffed, overstaffed, and Deputy Chief Buffington did some research too. And so the size of the town, the calls to service, and the number of officers we have, we really should be at, what, 19 full-time?
It's high. I mean,
I
obviously,
mean,
we're
it's
never
in
gonna be that
higher,
high,
but we're at 12, they're suggesting around 19. So, I mean, you can tell that we're understaffed. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna get up to 19, but adding an additional officer will help.
That's part of the reason why I was asking about, we're understaffed, especially if we're covering all of the burden that PSU used to cover part of themselves. And if they're not covering it and we got that funding put in your budget to hire,
Yeah, there's a
down
couple-
by what, 4, you
Yeah, I
said?
think they're down 4. But the good thing was too, is like, we always knew that there was 2 officers in Plymouth, and now sometimes there's 1 officer, and if they need help, who do we call? State police are down a significantly amount of troopers. So, and some towns around here don't have coverage in their towns. So it's difficult when you respond to a call, or if an officer's tied up on a call and another call comes in, who goes to it? So, and we keep seeing this more and more.
Spooky.
So remember, we need to still gross appropriate, so what?
Yep. No matter what happens there, we still have to appropriate for it.
Right, so we are seeing, over the last, so 2018-19 probably was the last real full year before COVID.
Yeah.
We saw about 90,000 that year. 21-22 was about 90,000.
But don't forget that PSU
This year's
was
trending around
almost
110.
full
They were staffed at that point, so
Yeah.
even bringing that down to 120 is, it lets Alex know that you're concerned about the overtime, but it's not 140 anymore.
I mean, I think I'm really comfortable with 120. I'd love to go even further just to push it, because it doesn't seem like we're using it. I mean, if we went to 110, that's still,
But don't forget, there's a couple of things. So this year, Plymouth State did pay for our time for the pirate party, right? We're gonna work very hard to stop that. But what happens if it doesn't stop?
but those numbers are already in the year-to-date that Ann suggested, the 46 expenditure.
Oh, are they in there?
Actually, most of your pirate party came out of your detail.
Revolving. So that's how we've been handling some
So
of
not
these
out of
things.
overtime, but out of the
No.
detail.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So if this does happen again, it sounds like Plymouth State will not pay for our time for this. It would not come out of our detail. It would come out of our overtime.
Has Plymouth State suggested that they won't pay if this happens again?
would that be?
I don't know.
Some new information?
There's conversation
Yeah.
that they may feel that's part of their life safety services agreement. But like I said, there's more meetings. Marlon and I are going to be meeting monthly now. So I want to get into a more depth and conversation about some of these things that we just touched the surface on today.
And back before COVID, we've had pop-up parties similar, not as big as Pirate Party, but obviously.
Or St.
you know,
Patrick's Party?
Yeah,
Yeah,
St.
that's
Patrick's
it.
parties. Those are not paid out of my detail line item because no one is reimbursing us. That comes out of our overtime. The only reason that the
That would have
pirate-
been included in the 21-22 number, though.
I think we sent PSU a bill for that, so it would have come out of our.
It still would have come out of it as it could have come out of detail, is what you're
details.
saying. Okay.
That's what I've been trying to do, is trying to, if somebody's going to reimburse us, we'll take it out of our revolving detail fund, so it doesn't affect our overtime. But some of these things, if they're not going to be reimbursed, they're all gonna come out of our overtime.
Which line item is the detail?
It's a
don't see it.
revolving detail
You
line item.
don't see it.
Yeah,
It's not considered
not
part of a
budgeted.
budget.
It's not considered part of the budget because it's billed,
money in, money out.
money in, money out.
And it's a separate, complete fund as approved at town meeting. And it's only to be used for detail.
Because it's hard to calculate how many details you might have coming up.
Right.
So that's why we set up the fund. It's easier just to have a revolving fund to do it that way, so you don't have to budget for overtime or
Yep.
details.
Okay.
Alex, if I might, Zach, please. Alex, if we took that number from 2021 and we increased it by 25%, that would bring us to 115,000. Would that work?
It might.
Yeah, I think that's a good start.
I'd be comfortable with
Yeah,
150.
if we take the numbers from, yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Even though that was COVID time.
Well,
But you were, at 18-19, you were at 90,000. At
Right.
2021, you were still at 90,000.
exactly. So I think
So it
115
doesn't
is
matter.
reasonable.
And I'm thinking, we've got the reduction in the PSU officers, this additional time, manpower that goes along with that, and that would cover those costs.
Reasonable.
I agree.
Okay. Board, 115?
Yep.
Usage of overtime. One thing I don't know if we want to go this route, but I wanted to at least throw it out there because we've talked about it, or I think we've even done it in past years. Addition of a staff member, big price line item. Do we build that into the baseline police budget, or do we line that item on the warrant so that the town gets to vote for that independent of the overall police budget?
I like them voting it in.
I mean, it increases the risk of getting the police officer approved, but it decreases the risk of the town completely voting your budget level funded.
Yeah.
I'm always pro
What
give
did
town
we
the
do
choices.
last
but-
year with the firefighter that was added? Was that a warrant article? or
Was
that-
a separate warrant article.
So I mean, keeping in line with what we've done, is that the process we should take?
Would be my temptation to do it. Not that it also gives you the advantage of being able to make the case you just made to us, to the town, to say, hey, you haven't increased our staff you've increased our staff by one person in 20 years, it's time. My gut feeling is the town votes it through flying colors. But
I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem with
I
it.
like it.
Sure.
So it'll be a separate warrant article then? And that will be pay and benefits in that article, Alex?
okay.
Pay and benefits, okay.
Any other from the board items we should discuss in the police section? Are we otherwise comfortable with the budget committee recommendations
Yep.
section?
I don't see any other areas that had any.
I see consensus. All right, it's time for parking.
Page 6, line 243. I would just like to bring your attention, the revenues that are coming in are astronomical, which is, it's really covering this budget, which in the future will make funds available for the police department to do other things with the parking money.
So you're
Do you have a
saying-
number?
Yeah, it's 155,952 was last year.
155,952 against a budget of 102,262.
That's a good
Alex, do
thing.
you want to give an update
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
where we are
So,
today?
Great.
Deputy Chief Buffington and myself, when Scott Moore left, we really sat down and looked at parking, what was there, what can we change, what can we do better. We were implementing Park Mobile. We looked at signage, what was, reasonable when people come to Plymouth. Does it make sense to you? Does it not make sense to you? What questions would you have if you parked here? So we put a lot of effort into redoing our signage, re-signing the meters, making sure that the stickers on there that would make sense to people, the times. Every meter has a number on it, so if there's a problem, when they call the police department, there's actually a meter number now. They just don't have to try to give a location of it and find it. Obviously we made the reduction of not a minimum of $1, still $1 an hour, but you can put a quarter in for 15 minutes. And that made it a huge thing, right? I mean, if someone's gonna go in and get their cup of coffee or a sandwich and can put a quarter in for 15 minutes, that makes sense, right? And no one's gonna put $1 in there. They're gonna take the chance.
They're gonna take the chance to
and they're
not get
gonna go
ticketed.
in. So, we did that. We put all the new meter inserts in there. So we did a lot of those changes. Just going out and talking to people, how the thing works, how Park Mobile works, keeping the meters downtown. So, if you don't want to use the app, you can use the meters. The back streets, we did remove the meters. A lot of people didn't use those back street meters because it's usually used by college students that like technology. So instead of maintaining those meters, a lot of the meters were damaged on the back streets. So we removed the meters and just used Park Mobile. And we've seen a huge increase of people using Park Mobile. I think just last month was a revenue of $10,000 just in Park Mobile, and that doesn't include parking tickets and
So I think our between Coin and Park Mobile just for last month was a little over 17,000. And that doesn't include any parking tickets or citations that were issued.
So right now, we are averaging around 100 parking tickets, and an average parking ticket's $30. So our
100 parking tickets a week.
a week.
100 a week, yeah.
So we do have a new parking enforcement officer, and he does a great job for us. We're not trying to over-police the parking, but being fair. And so I think we've done wonders for parking, and to the point where we can do nice things. So I've worked with Scott Whedon, I've worked with the parking committee, and what we would like to do is promote shop local for the businesses downtown. And next week, what we're going to do is bag the meters and for free 2-hour parking, so people can come to Plymouth and, you know, shop local without worrying about paying for the meter.
Is that like a one-day kind of promotion?
So it's
or
a 1 week.
1 week promotion? Nice.
So with the revenues that we've gotten already, the increased revenues, I think it's a great thing to do for the community, so.
So we'll enforce the 2-hour parking, just to keep
Right.
people moving, so they don't park there all day, but
Exactly.
I think it's a great idea.
So what we did is we went and, there's a company in Manchester that makes something, just a plastic meter bag. It says seasonal greetings, 2-hour free parking. And, you know, I think the business owners will appreciate it. So.
The other thing,
100%.
in my meeting with the university today, starting on the 16th of December, they will open up all these lots out here so people can park downtown through the Christmas season, and no tickets will be issued by the campus safety services.
That's
I don't know if they're gonna provide signs that says free parking with an arrow.
Let me
maybe?
talk to Marlon, sure.
If not, maybe we can work.
If
I
not,
just
maybe
think
we
that
get some opened up that we
Yeah,
could just
absolutely.
store in the basement and bring them back, you know, if they don't have a year or anything on them, something we can bring out during
Absolutely.
the season and put back.
Yeah.
So,
So
well,
that's what we're doing with parking.
I have to say, 3 years ago, parking was losing money.
Yeah, and that didn't make any sense.
Hand over
to me.
fist, they were
We
losing
put a lot
so
of
much
work into
money.
this parking, and
You guys have transformed this. That's
put a lot of
amazing.
work into it. So we
Well,
still
it's
have a
paid
lot
off.
more work to do. We still have a lot more signage that we want to put on the back streets too. We have it. It's just, you know, with not having a parking enforcement officer and then having one and training him, you know, with Park Mobile, also, the other big thing we did with parking is that we transitioned some metered parking to permitted parking. So that's increased as well, because there was parking spots, metered parking spots on Green Street that were just unused. So we switched that to permanent parking, and those permits sold.
All of them are filled.
Yeah, and then we switched some of the parking spots up here for the postal service, and I think we've sold maybe 4 of those, 4 out of the 5 that we wanted to recognize, for the postal service. So, I mean, we've tried to do that. We're also working with, Highway Department, Water Village Sewer, Parking Committee, and the Energy Commission to get, a small little parking lot down by the senior center, to do some more permitted parking for, what we're trying to do is to get the employees off of Main Street and park down there. But one of the biggest concerns is lighting. So even
Did I hear we're
tonight-
gonna do solar lighting
Yeah,
down
so
there too?
even tonight, so the Energy Commission, I located this site online, for some solar lighting, and they actually got a couple of lights to do testing. And Deputy Chief and I went down there tonight. We got a couple of posts, and tomorrow, hopefully with Highway Department, we'll get those installed to do some testing to see if they work. If they work, that was the biggest safety concern, is that the lighting. If it does work and things are great, we can do maybe, what did we say, 20 spots? 20 spots, and Marianne has reached out to some local businesses to see if there was people interested in them, and they are. So that could even increase more.
It's fantastic.
Excellent.
So parking's good.
Any, and it looks like on top of all of that, the request is for less budget for parking in the coming year than in the prior year.
Yeah, we noticed that, like our long-term 24-hour parking, we paid for a kiosk machine. It was really, all it was doing was processing our credit cards. But Park Mobile already does that for us. The only benefit of having the kiosk is it did accept quarters, but who uses quarter for long-term parking? Well, it took us a year to fill up the bucket in it, so we knew that it really didn't. So we're going to stop those services, which is a monthly cost for that company to do it, and use Park Mobile, which is already implemented. All we had to do is we installed, 5 or 6 signs down there, and we've been monitoring it. And everyone's using Park Mobile, so
Yep.
we're good.
That's great. Any other questions about parking from the board?
No?
Overtime, what do we
Yeah.
spend overtime money
So,
on?
yeah, so our parking enforcement officer helps us for evening events. So let's say Halloween, he comes out and helps us, he mans one of our crosswalks on Highland Street.
Holiday parade.
Holiday parade. So what used to be as the parking enforcement officer prior used to come on the weekends and get overtime to collect coin, and we took that away and implemented coin collection during the week.
Cool, thanks.
But there is some overtime for other things not parking related, but traffic enforcement to assist us.
Gotcha. So the next budget we're looking at is dispatch, and that's.
Just wanted to quickly confirm, we're good accepting all
Yes.
recommendations.
What page
Me,
is that?
yes.
Next page.
265,
Seven.
page, bottom of page 6 on to page 7. Department request 646, 495, and it was actually increased due to health insurance. You'll see that line to 648, 577, but they did do some adjusting to try to make it come in line.
Yeah, so dispatch, another thing we're requesting is for an additional full-time dispatcher. So back in 2007, we actually went backwards and took a full-time spot and made it a part-time spot. And the reason for that is at the time, the department really wanted an employee to come run the dispatch center, but was already a retiree from the state. So what they did is they took that full-time spot and made it a part-time spot so they could hire them. And at the time, the union employees in there agreed to that because it always had overtime every week in it. And back then, it wasn't an issue. Well, employees have changed and no one wants to work overtime. So we had to adjust scheduling in there so there wasn't automatic overtime all the time because everyone was getting mandated to work and it was burning people out. So we had to adjust shifts. So we dispatch for 10 agencies. We're only a police dispatch center, but we do dispatch for Plymouth Highway, and we also dispatch for Plymouth Water Village Sewer after hours. So if someone has a problem, who do they call? They call us, and then we page the on-call person. So right now, currently, our dispatch center that runs 24/7, dispatches for 10 police agencies, has 4 full-time employees. That's a lot to ask for full-time employees to do. So there are several phone lines that come into the police department. Well, when there's only one dispatcher, you can only talk to one person at a time. So let's say there's 3 emergency 911 calls coming in for the three out of the 10 towns that we answer for. We can't answer those. So they will get transferred to the sheriff's office. But again, the sheriff's office is going to call our dispatch center to give us the call that we missed. So, calls for service and officers increased in different towns we dispatch for, has increased the calls for service that we answer. So, like I said, we haven't increased a full-time position in that dispatch center for many, many, many years, and we've gone backwards. Back when I started in 2002, we had several part-time dispatchers. Right now, again, we technically have 2 part-time dispatchers. One works 32 hours a week and one works 24 hours. That's what we got. So if we have 4 full-time dispatchers, one's on vacation and one calls in sick, we're in trouble. So we really need to increase the personnel in there. For one, all these towns are paying the town of Plymouth for services. We need to make sure that we can provide the services.
Does this line item as written include the addition of a full-time and removal of a part-time, or just the addition of a full-time?
Additional.
So you'd still have the part-time. This is
Absolutely.
a net new
Yeah,
position.
we-
This is not
we can't,
undoing
yeah,
what
we
was done.
can't
Okay.
go backwards, so we're trying to increase.
Okay.
We need, a lot of times we need more than one dispatcher on at a time, and we're trying to increase that because of the call volume.
And in this spreadsheet, there's a note that says Ann's figures. It has a different number than what's requested. Is there? What's going on here?
No, you don't.
You do. On the
What sheet are you looking at?
I'm looking at PD dispatch.
All right, what sheet though? What, on the bottom?
PD dispatch,
Okay, hold on, sorry.
and it's J9. My guess is it's just some scratch, but I wanted to make sure we addressed it, because it's a $7,000 difference.
Mine only goes to I, so it must not.
Yeah, mine only goes to I too.
That's
Biggest
secret.
difference, the
Secret.
biggest difference
I
is
see
in the
it.
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Well, you're looking at, yeah, I don't know what that is there, sorry.
I don't know if that triggered a memory for you, but if it doesn't, that's totally
It's
fine.
gone. You don't see it anymore, that.
Perfect. My second question was gonna be, and I know it's not as rosy a story as parking, but do we know what the revenues are for?
I actually have it on here, 268,217 is what we brought in last year, 268,217.
217.
So something, Zach, with regards to the revenue brought in on that, Alex and I have had a conversation to really evaluate how we're invoicing and how we're billing. So there may be different avenues or different ways that we could do this that would be more equalized, based on valuation, a couple different theories that actually Mark and Mike have brought up in conversation. So we're gonna be researching that to see how we should be invoicing and billing for our dispatch services.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So we just want to make sure the other towns and entities are paying their fair.
Fair share.
Yeah.
Yep. And trying to make sure that the dispatch center, I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll work together, but to kind of almost run itself, and to upkeep itself. I mean, there's a lot of equipment in there. Our radio system alone, is almost, what did we spend, like $350,000 to update the radio system? So we need to make sure that in a few years it can fix itself.
So part of what you're billing the other entities covers for the replacement cost.
That's what we want to do, yes.
It does not at this time.
No,
Yeah, that's what I figured.
exactly.
We bill we look at 3 years back, or 3 years forward.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't want to be unfair to the other towns, but at the same time, we don't want to be unfair to us.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to also take the whole burden on replacing the 350.
Capital needs to be added.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a lot more in a few years of a new radio system,
And is that new radio system in the CIP?
I
Or is
did-
it far enough out?
Yes, I put it
You put it
in
there.
the CIP. I talked to our radio vendor of the components within the system, of what their life is. Yep.
Is it still gonna be like, is the university gonna be like out of this, or what? Or this
So
is
right now,
dispatch?
currently, the university does pay for dispatch services.
Okay, but
As
they're gonna
above
be,
and beyond their life safety agreement.
are they gonna like switch over to,
Nope, so the police services are through our dispatch center still. They do have a radio link to UNH, they
Right.
don't use it.
Okay.
And the police services, I mean, their calls for service to the police department, they're sworn officers for us, and it needs to go through our dispatch center.
Would
Okay.
you,
Having two police departments and two different dispatch centers at two different locations would cause
Mm,
mayhem.
I thought we were facing that like a few years ago, though.
or-
Yeah, they implemented a radio system, it does link, but, they don't use it
Okay.
for dispatch services at least.
would it make sense to include the dispatching costs to PSU to be included in that agreement?
It
In the
might, I mean, we
LSS.
could look at the options, but it could be a discussion we have.
I think they are, in that agreement, I think it does say that you will pay for any dispatching separate.
Currently it does, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there's just a call out, it's not the actual dollar amount in
Right.
there.
Sorry.
Just like details are in there as well, but
Yep.
they don't.
But again, I mean, we looked at it, and if we could reduce in line items that we, could save, we did. We did our best to offset, hopefully getting an additional employee.
Separate warrant article on that as well?
I
Makes
would
sense?
think so.
Consistency.
Yep. But overall, our dispatch center is busy. I mean, towns have increased their staffing. We just never increased our dispatch. We should have been doing this a long time ago, and now we're at that point. It's a safety concern if we can't answer 911 calls.
Is there some formula for that? How many dispatchers per, how many
Uh,
calls?
so I looked and we did some research of all the dispatch centers around here. With lower calls for service, they have more employees. So I don't know if there's really a formula. We have busy times and we have slow times, and it all depends on what's going on. If it's a snowstorm, we could have a high volume of calls. It's kind of like one of those things that you can't really predict. So,
Nate, have you, Nate,
Mm-hmm.
Alex, Nate and Alex, have you shared with the board the dispatch statistics that you shared with me so we could look at those?
I can absolutely share them with you.
I think you find it to be a very interesting statistic of the dispatch calls that come in for service and then those that go out and the calls that are answered via the phone. So I found it very interesting to see the numbers that are coming through our dispatch center.
I just printed it out. I had a feeling you might ask. So every month, we actually keep stats of what's going on. And so currently, this is just for 2022. See how she's got this ordered out. So we dispatch for Ashland, Bridgewater, Campton, Groton, Hebron, Holderness, Plymouth State University, Rumney, and Thornton Police Departments.
Alex, I'm going to ask you to move closer to that mic or pull the mic to you, please. I'm sorry, I just want...
So the way this is in a formula and the way it printed out is way different, but. So currently, first year, it printed out really weird. Can you see it on your phone?
Can you, maybe you just share it with us electronically?
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Thought it would print out better than it did, but.
So would you say your calls are up like 25%? Are they...
So it's hard to tell because calls for service can be many different things, right? Should print it out better. Now the way it's printed out doesn't make any sense. Formula. There we go. So calls for service totals is 67,780, and then telephone calls is 42,478. So, yeah, this year we've answered 42,478 phone calls. They've entered 67,780 calls for service into the computer system. That's quite a bit.
And that's just 2022,
Just 2022.
Correct, yeah.
to date.
Yep.
Oh, that's year to date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a busy dispatch center, and a lot of times there might be only one dispatcher on. So currently, we can only have 2 dispatchers on at the same time. We only have 2 dispatch consoles. We really should have 3, but that's what we got.
Around 130 calls a day. It's busy.
Yeah, it's busy.
Dispatch. Any other questions from the board about what we've been presented from dispatch?
Nope.
Are we comfortable with the budget committee's recommendations with the one adjustment around pulling that out for the warrant?
And overtime. Oh, no, that wasn't dispatch.
Overtime was in the police. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, though.
But wages and benefits.
Yep, we'll do all that adjustment. Yep.
I think that'll bring the budget line increase to a more reasonable percentage as well.
Sure will.
Make it
Yes.
look less like, what the heck are they doing?
Is that a yes? So we ready
Yes,
to go?
it
Yep,
looked like
okay.
a consensus.
All right,
Yep, let's
so,
move to the next one.
Just
Resource
keep us
officer?
on schedule. We have, the next one is the police resource officer. Keep in mind that the schools pay 75% of this budget back to us. In this past year, they paid $90,180.
I think the only increases is the union 2.5% increase and Insurance, right?
Right.
And
Anything else
gas,
increased? And gas, yeah.
fuel.
A majority of that is going to be the insurance itself. Yep.
Right. But it's been very beneficial to have a school resource officer in the schools. The schools love it. The officer's been very, very busy. And the officer actually does like all of our juvenile cases. So it's a benefit for the police department as well.
Looks like a reasonable increase. Any questions from the board?
No concerns.
On that one? Concerns? I think we're good with what the budget committee is recommending here, which is effectively no change, correct? Yes, no change from the budget committee.
Thank you, Mark, for that one.
All right.
All right,
think-
so they probably have some capital, but we'll get to those at the meeting. in
Correct,
3
we're not
weeks,
doing
so
capital
you guys
this
don't have to do
evening.
anything with that.
All right. Any
Thank
other
you,
further
guys.
questions?
Thanks, guys.
Good. Thank
I
you
think
all.
we're,
Tonight.
I think we're good with you all. Thank you.
The next one is going to be Diane Lynch from the library.
Oh, yeah.
Line is she on?
Library.
What,
Page is that it?
I'll be
Sorry.
right there.
She's
Hold
getting
on.
there.
Line 613, if that's helpful.
6:13?
Oh, that's helpful.
Way down.
That's what I was looking for.
Everyone's got a big copy but me.
Line 613, page 14.
Gives me a relative idea of where it is.
So the library, as presented, put in a request for a budget of $534,000. That was reduced to $526,000. I know that some of the employees, there was some adjustment in your wages that you had to do for your particular employees. So some may be getting more than 2.5,
Yes.
but it was to bring them up in the scale
Yes.
as they should have been.
Would you like me to speak more about that?
Sorry, just trying to get my bearings in all the docs, but anything that you would like to speak to that's significant?
So we have 5 full-time employees at the library. I am one of those employees. I did not ask for above the 2.5. However, 4 of the full-time employees I did, and additionally we have a part-time employee who works 28 hours a week. I did ask for it for her as well. We actually have been, I'm going to knock on wood, we have been very fortunate with employee retention at the library, which is, as you know, a tough feat these days. We have several employees that have been there for 5 years or more. Our newest employee has been there for over a year now. Although we've got 2 part-time employees. One of them is seasonal, aside from the 28-hour per week person. We actually are a pretty high caliber staff. 4 of our full-time employees are MLS grade employees, which works out to be a bargain, in my opinion, because you've got a lot of firepower, and of our full-time employees, only one of those persons is on a married plan, and so we've got 4 single people giving you a bargain rate on the insurance. So I think that's something to take into consideration as well.
Is that going to go on for a while now? or-
Well, no, I can't make any promises about that. You know, nobody's signed anything or written anything in blood. But, you know, it's been like that for some time, and I believe that's something to take into consideration. We are the heads of our households, and, you know, that's nothing to sneeze at. So, aside from the fact that you're getting a bargain because you have such stellar employees, you're also getting a bargain in the insurance department. So, I think that's something to consider as well. And 2 of those employees, actually, that are full-time employees, when we did the wage and classification study for the town, were actually on the list of folks that had to be brought up to meet even the minimum requirement. So they are definitely not being overpaid. I don't think anyone that works in a municipality is being overpaid, probably, but they definitely were not being overpaid.
So a significant change as you look down through, is the library revenue generated expense?
Yes.
Okay.
What is tell me about that. I'm confused by it.
Many people are confused about that. It's an unusual category, and it's nothing that I was familiar with, and everybody who sees the 810 line is puzzled by it. So the trustee, I don't have check writing authority at the library, and so this was a line that was devised so that when the library has expenses, and normally for things that are paid by the trustees, it would be things that relate to programming or
Special programming.
special
yeah.
programming needs, things like that, so that I don't have to go and ask the trustees, which meet, they meet monthly, for special funds every time we want to purchase something or have something that's billed to the trustees. I send it over to the town, which sort of forwards the funds, in effect. They put it through the 810 line, just like we would bill everything to a special line that gets attributed to that line. The trustees, the town forwards the funds under the 810 line, and then at the end of the year, that line basically gets paid back to the town by the trustees with the trustees' funds. So it's sort of a way of the trustees paying for it, the trustees catching the town later, and then we get to pay, we get the town pays for it, and then the trustees pay them back at the end of the year.
So I understand
Sort
a
of an
little bit
accounting-
differently.
Okay, tell us,
Just a little bit
Kinda like a
differently.
loan.
So I understood that this line was created for special programs that the library wanted to run, such as Christmas programs or things along that line. And then what would happen is that the town would actually get a full reimbursement from the trustees of whatever they spend that. So it's similar to what you're saying. However, that isn't what's been happening over the last several years. Prior to me coming in, what the town has been doing is they would say, okay, you got $5,000 left on that revenue generating line. We'll take it off what you didn't spend and give you a check for the rest. That's what we've been doing over the last few years. The library is an entity of the town. It's, whatever is left should go against the tax rate. It should not be just given to the library trustees any longer. The feeling that we had, or I had, when this was changed to $1 is the library has their own funds. And I'm sorry that they may have to wait a week or two for a check. However, we shouldn't be expending our money, the town's money on that. The library can do that on their own. They have funds. And I don't know how much you have in funds right now, but it's over 100,000.
Well, that I will have to defer to the treasurer of the trustees to address.
So they do have money available out there, and it may be an inconvenience to call a trustee and say, I need a check for $5, $10, whatever, but that's how, we do have the credit cards now.
We do.
So there are other ways of doing this without adding an
Without this
additional
kind of
amount.
strange line item.
Convoluted.
Yeah, so I'm trying to clean it up, but if the board wants to go back to basically front-loading that money, you can, but it just is, there's $8,000 that was removed, and I think that was pretty close to the difference between the two budgets.
Yeah, looked like it.
Diane, is Doug the chair of the trustees?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think he understands the 810 line either.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll see him tomorrow.
I
So,
might defer to Mark Halloran on this one because Mark was around, I think, at the genesis of the.
Mark, do you understand the
No,
810 line?
This is before my time, no, this was after me, because it should be that, it is a town entity, it's a town entity. And if anything that we do should be budgeted in the town budget. And then if there is revenue that comes back, it should come back to the town of Plymouth and be put in the general fund. So this is something that came after my period of time on the library trustees. But when Mike and I looked at the 8,000, and I'm from the school, if you can't explain it to the town meeting in 30 seconds, you're in a lot of trouble. And I wouldn't even attempt this. So I guess our feeling was, put a dollar in it, let Scott and Ann and the library folks work it out for a year, and it's $8,000 that we don't have to raise. And then if there are issues that come along, Scott will inform you as the year goes on.
We'll figure out how to
then-
get
and
a
we'll
financial system in place that
Exactly. Nobody wants
is
to take anything
explainable
away from
to a,
anybody or not have any programs. It's just, are we raising money that we don't have to raise?
and
nobody
creating
can-
a financial model that's a little bit
Exactly, and no one can
shady
explain
feeling.
it. So
Yeah.
let's just dollar it out and see what happens.
I've been, well, I haven't, I attended one of the library trustees meetings last Thursday, and I do plan on attending those on their schedule. So I think a good idea would be for Ann and I to attend their next meeting and have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
So if you could put
I'm
us
in
on-
definitely in support of this change to add clarity. But I would want to make sure it didn't mean, oh, now we can't have programming at the library. That is not the intention, right?
Not at all. The intention is to use the library funds that they have to pay for utilized, and it does need new carpet. You know, it's a well-run machine. From what I've seen when I've been over there.
That has always been fairly clear in your budget requests in the time that I've been here. They were always very clear and very reasonable. Any other questions from the board on library?
No.
Are we comfortable accepting the budget committee's recommendations?
Yes.
I see a consensus.
Diane, if you could let us know when the next meeting is and put us on the agenda to have that conversation, or start that conversation.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Ooh, that was easy. Quick, run.
Easy.
Ready to go?
Thank you.
All right, so the next budgets you're talking about are the ambulance, the fire department, and the health officer. And
Hey, Tom.
the ambulance starts on page 7.
Hey,
Line
Neil.
305.
Good, you?
Start with ambulance.
Now, we have posted receivables of the past year. We count those as revenues, $579,827.
We're on page 8. Or actually,
Seven.
That's
page 7.
Seven.
Posted.
Receivables.
What have we collected?
Uh-oh.
I don't have that.
Half
answer.
that? And I know that we struggle sometimes with collection on ambulance.
We collect almost $500,000 last year, so.
Right, that's what we put in receivables. Is that what we collected? Or is that what the
No, that's what
receivable?
we collected.
Okay.
That includes the contracts with the other communities, I think.
Contracts in the billing.
This includes
Yes.
the contracts with them.
Yep.
Okay.
Used to be we were getting beat up.
We never used to bill at all. We didn't bill anybody
Yeah.
when I started. We're also doing, 50% of the volume that we're doing today, but.
Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about what we talked about maybe for budgeting for future?
Yeah, so Tommy and I have had some conversations, really, again, as Alex is going to do with the dispatch and Tommy's doing with his billing agency, is really looking at how we invoice our contracted towns. Because there are several different ways to do it, but I think we need to meet with the billing agency first to better understand. So I have a better understanding of how it all goes down and really taking a closer look. And again, doing our due diligence to make sure we're getting our biggest bang for our buck, because it is a service that we do lose some money on, but we need to research that a little bit more in depth and see that. The other thing that Tommy and I and Kevin talked about the other day is really trying to break out the overtime wages. Because the budget, there's overtime wages in this budget, but they're dispersed throughout the different lines. Am I correct, Tom?
Yes, so there's a callback, for instance, there's a callback line for permanent personnel. And then there's another line that covers vacation, sick, and paid time off.
So trying to break that
So-
out to come up with an overtime line that covers those associated costs with, just as Tommy explained.
Mm-hmm.
But labeled specifically overtime.
Correct.
Yeah, we've been talking about flip-flopping these budgets, if you will, for quite some time. In other words, we know that if we spend 70% of our time on EMS this year, then 70% of our expenses are EMS related. And so really, we're spending over $1 million a year, if you look at it that way, on the ambulance service, quite a bit more than $1 million.
Even though on paper, it looks like the ambulance service is inexpensive.
And as Scott and I talked about, one of the reasons for that back in the day was that one of the pilots that was paid was based on our fire budget. So it behooved us to put all the salaries in that line, in which they still remain today. But when we calculate the cost of the contract towns, we have, this isn't gonna sound good for the accountants, but a separate set of books that shows the true cost of EMS. And that's how we bill those contract towns. And so why
Gotcha,
shouldn't
so you
we-
bring in all of the fire expenses that you think are attributable to EMS when
Right.
you bill the contract towns so that you actually can show
what it
full
costs us
cost of offering that service.
to roll a wheel on the ambulance.
Yep.
But if those contract towns were to look at the budget,
Yeah, so if
that
you
we
looked
go-
at this budget, Zach, and you saw $155,796, and I'm a contract town paying $80,000 a year,
Like, why am I paying for half your ambulance service?
out of that budget. So I think
Right.
what Tommy's talking about moving forward is really looking at the actual cost of the ambulance, so it reflects those expenses. And then looking at how we bill, and how we bill the contract with the contract towns, but also the money we're losing on billing is obviously we're not gonna go back after the individual we transported, so to speak. But why can't there be a balanced billing back to the town with those associated losses that we're seeing in a year? And I'm not sure exactly how we do that yet. That's why we want to meet with the billing agency, who can give us some more advice on that.
You know, we show that now when we develop that contract price, and that's how we justify the cost increase. Some of it you're never gonna recover. I think we've talked about the fact that 50% of our payer mix is Medicare and Medicaid. You know, we can't balance bill them. We send a bill for $1,000,
Your microphone.
we get 300 and we're done.
Right.
The commercial insurance companies also do this thing called repricing, where it's very similar. We send a bill for $1,000, they reprice it to 600, and we're done. And you can't call them and get a justification for that. They won't talk to you. It might be beneficial for Jeff, after he meets with us, to come in and talk to the board, too, I think.
Sure. I just think we need to have an open conversation about it to make sure
Yes.
we're doing it the right way.
Yes.
And is there other avenues that we can take to calculate the cost of that contract? Again, evaluation, I mean, there is, but we won't know until we talk to Jeff.
But
But
certainly
we're-
what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Tom, go ahead.
What you said is accurate, and you said it, I think, in the police discussion, that it certainly shouldn't be a burden to the Plymouth taxpayers that we're responding to other communities. It should at least be a break-even affair.
Right, and right now you can't tell that because it looks like we're making a killing on the ambulance.
Right.
If you just look at this line item, but
Right. And the income also trickles in over a long period of time. I mean, by the time it goes to collections and they work on it for a year or two, you know, that money does trickle in, but it might take some time.
yeah. Well, but
But it's
hopefully
still-
that's a rolling window,
Yeah,
right?
it
Where
is.
even if you're collecting on something from 2 years ago, this year, it's it's consistent with how much you will collect in 2 years from
Right.
the stuff you're
It
billing
is
today.
rolling.
I have a question.
Please.
Where do you show the amortization for a new ambulance?
That's in capital.
In the capital plan, I think we have a 6-year program right now.
Correct.
That's what we're shooting for
Well,
because,
that's part of your cost.
That's in the capital.
right, and
But that's not in your budget.
that's
It's not in his
also,
regular budget,
it's in the
outlay.
capital.
That should be explained to somebody that questions your charges.
Yep, that'll be
That-
considered.
That's also built into our contract price.
Yeah.
So whether we appropriate it this year or not, we're gonna spend 300.
To, went 10x in its price, but all that money came out of this other budget line item,
Right.
Yeah, the ambulance goes to $1 million, but your fire department budget goes to 974.
Right.
So there's
Right.
that break
Right.
Yeah.
at that point. But I think that explains the true cost of running the service and what the responsibility the town of Plymouth has with that.
And we could even build that into town meeting this year by saying next year we're going to be doing this to really figure out the true costs. So don't be surprised next year when you see these numbers do this.
That's a good plan. Give them a
Yeah, I mean,
precursor.
10% of them will remember, but at least you'll have them on your side.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
100% agreed. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, what is, what are the big expenses in here, big changes?
Still on the ambulance?
Still in the ambulance, yeah, we went a little sideways there.
So one of the things that we're reevaluating, if you will, is our paramedic program. So you'll see some actual downward trends in, for instance, training wages.
Mm-hmm.
We have lost a number of paramedics over the years as we train them up and they leave. Does it make a huge difference to have a paramedic on a call? Yes. Can we ever keep them here? Probably not. So we're having to take another look at that, and so we're taking a year off, basically. So you'll see about $20,000 in 4 different lines in fire and EMS on that, what we had hoped was gonna be 2 paramedic programs a year, so that we could have a paramedic on every shift. So that's why you see some of the downward spikes in training wages and training expenses. Contract services was up quite a bit. We were actually looking at a scheduling software program as opposed to a paper calendar, which wasn't really the most efficient thing today. Much of this is just a product of our economy with the fuel and the tires and the diesel going up.
Yep. It looks like that's where a majority of your increases are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Fuel, tires, heating, electrical.
Yeah. Retirement, we don't have any control over. FICA.
Yep.
I don't think the budget committee had anything.
No,
with
they
the
didn't make
ambulance?
anything.
No.
155, 796.
What was that number?
155, 796.
Look at the
It's on
budget
line
committee.
332.
It's 155.
One of the questions I have
Oh.
is, we had talked about legal fees coming out of our own budget, so we did put 1,000 in each budget for that, and I don't know where we're gonna land with that, if it's all gonna come out of the town office again, but just,
That's my understanding, and then build back, or not build back. So why do they have the $1,000 in here? They shouldn't.
They don't need to.
They don't need to.
Okay,
So
so,
it all comes out of the town office legal fees budget, which we discussed.
Yes, the only separation is planning and zoning,
Yeah.
and that's it.
we don't call them a lot, but when we do, it's very timely and probably costly because.
And you are, the town manager is notified whenever they get a copy of that email back both ways. So you know when that's going out, yep.
Yes.
So is,
So, and we'll look, I think that's in office supplies under each budget. We can
Alright.
lower that by 1,000 each.
office supplies,
Ann or whoever's tallying.
yep, I'm doing it now.
What number's that?
It would
Office
be
supplies.
Line 310 on the ambulance.
It should be 3,
There is no 310.
no, there isn't.
No, the number
Oh, sorry.
310, line 310.
All right, so we'll take,
4215, 200, and office expenses.
Yeah.
so that will go down to 3950.
And it should be the same, the same line in the fire budget. $4220, 200.
So office expense reduction.
Um,
I do see that there were some town manager recommendations. And I don't know if any of those were reviewed by budget committee.
We did, yes.
yes, and
You in the fire budget now, Zach?
No, I was still in the ambulance. There was in particular, I noticed $1,000 reduction on the attorney consultant fees.
that's the one that Tom was just talking about.
Oh, that's the one, that was the office expense
Yep,
you was just
so-
talking about, okay.
Zach, if you can look at line 310, that's gone now to 3950.
3950, yeah.
And line 346 will go to the same amount, 3950.
Okay, that's why I was confused. There's two different lines we were talking.
Two different budgets, yep. So we're all set with the 155, 796?
Yeah.
You know, at some point, just as a manager, I would like to have
Less a
one
1,000.
budget, but that's probably not possible with the ambulance service.
I think especially as we're trying to add that clarity.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because there's so many things that we have to think about, you know, what's fair to split in the split? You know, most of these lines, should it be 70-30? Should it be 50-50? We'll look at that.
Yeah.
Mm.
It'd be good to have another set of eyes or three.
I agree. And I appreciate your openness to take a look at that as well, Tom.
So that new budget, Tom, now 154, 796,
Okay.
okay?
One of the things, and we'll have to figure this out in the spreadsheet, but one of the things that keeps confusing me is the numbers that are on the main budget don't match the numbers on the tabs. And so there's gotta be a formula or something that's wrong.
Some of them we're not even carrying over. So I can tell you, I went to the main budget and
The main budget's right.
I made it work.
As I flip back and forth,
Yeah.
because there's some stuff that's wrong on the main budget too, but whatever. The rows on the select board recommendations don't line up. So something,
So we're going now to the fire
We're good with ambulance?
department.
everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
The budget that's requested, 1,974,000,007.16. And the budget's being recommended is 1,991,872. So they added,
Recommended went up.
they recommended going up.
I have 1.974.
That was what you requested.
Okay.
But they added.
Budget committee added expenses.
And that is because of the,
So it's
Insurance.
gonna be 0.99
Okay.
whole.
the insurance for the new employee who is in here. We added him as a family, they may have added him as a two-person, I don't know, so.
So you budget for that, Ann, as if it's gonna be a family plan?
I did this one,
be safe?
because you have, not to no negativity, but you have the most family members that we've seen that have come on, so to be safe, I did a family plan
Yeah.
for that next one. You have the youngest.
Jeez, Tom.
Hang out with the library more. The
Keep them together.
library is-
I know. I know.
Usually fire and police,
Firefighters.
high divorce rate.
But you still
Well,
gotta
down
pay
the
for
road,
the-
Still gotta pay for their kids, Tom.
Those
Still gotta pay
are
for their
temporary
kids.
figures
They have
right
lots of
now.
kids.
That's right.
But don't
Gotta
usually
keep 'em on a
police
family
and
plan
fire,
for
they
those
marry
first
each
7.
other, or is that
Yes.
hospital work? I don't know.
And that saves the town money too when that happens.
Oh, boy.
There you go.
So this budget, as written, includes 4 firefighters?
No, we had talked with you about that?
Yep.
And the town manager. And although that was our first thought, to have 3 people per shift, and let me back up, this is being driven not only by call volume, but more importantly, the fact that we've lost much of our call company. People are just not signing up to do this part-time. We lost about 6 personnel this year on the call company.
Fiscal year, yep.
We went to job fairs. The state has a recruitment and retention specialist now that we've engaged with. And we got 1 EMT from that PSU part-time job fair. And she hung around for about a month and decided, like many others, that she doesn't have time for this. So that's really what's driving the new personnel expense. As an example, we had a cardiac arrest today where the only people there were career people. We recalled the whole department, looking for help, looking for station coverage, and got this many coming back. And that's not unusual. That's just the way it is right now.
So his original request was for 4 full-time. He has backed that down to 1 after discussions with the town manager and the budget committee. So he is looking for 1 additional career firefighter, EMS.
So that's on the, okay. And then what's driving the increase on the special regular replace fire?
Which line is that, Zach? Which budget?
340 or 4220, 12501?
So that's gonna go up as a result of having the extra person, for one thing.
Does that line also get used for overtime coverage? Tommy?
Yes,
Yes.
vacation, personal, and sick time. Sick time is one of those things that's tough to budget for, and we used to not put anything in there, and then
Right.
you can't do that. So,
And now that's considered time worked. So it's considered an overtime rate
Yep. Per their latest.
for their latest contract as well.
that's right, there's not much now that's not overtime.
And if I'm not mistaken, the contract really directs that. right?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
you're not be able to pull a per diem person in until you've talked to a union employee.
That's right.
So it really drives us back to have a full-time career firefighter unless there's not one available, which sometimes you can, sometimes you can't get a per diem person that you have.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right now, because we have a person out with an injury, you know, we are using a couple of call personnel have agreed to cover some of those shifts. Which
But we're
is,
still paying that full-time person.
right, you're still paying the full-time person,
They're out
but it's
with an
about
injury?
half the money. I mean, to cover a shift,
It's back light duty, Neil.
a 24-hour shift is $1,000
Oh,
bucks.
they're still
For a
working.
career person, about half of that for a
Can't
call
cover a
person,
shift.
if you can get them.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry, Neil.
Oh, you had a situation where they were scheduling their time so that they got more overtime? Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
Was that corrected?
I don't know if it was corrected. I think it was, brought to their attention, actually.
With the fire department?
Mhm.
I don't remember that.
Some of the
How long ago?
That was probably a couple of years ago. We, you know, we kind of like.
The
working through
mandatory recall list?
it. I don't think it was that. It's kind of like shifting around of, you know, taking advantage of a person out on sick leave and then somebody getting like double time or something like that, or I'm sure you've been.
Shift swap, is that what
Yeah.
it was called?
Yeah.
Shift swap, they used to get paid overtime for that, or I don't know if they still do
No,
or not.
if they swap shifts, it's.
Shift for shift, right?
Yeah, it's hour for
Yeah.
hour.
Except
that-
if they already
I mean, if
work
it's an
their two
overtime
shifts.
Yeah, they get overtime. Yeah.
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 Yeah, we don't have much shift swapping going on right now. We're so short-staffed that.
Yeah.
Guys won't swap.
They just gotta work.
Yeah,
their
you
own.
could be on mandatory recall today and work a shift and then get recalled again Wednesday, because there's only 7 people to run through that list.
Mm.
And if somebody's out sick or on vacation, they can't be recalled. And again, that's a
Need that other
contract.
firefighter.
So I feel like I'm missing something still. So the new firefighter comes out of the regular wages fire line.
His regular wages. go,
Salary,
yes.
but then there's 2 overtime lines.
Right, and so I'm seeing the special regular replace firefighter going from, I'm rounding to whole numbers, from 80,000 to 150,000. What's driving that
That's 40
$70,000?
That's 4220, which one?
4220,
Yeah,
12501.
I got it.
Special regular replace.
Special regular replace fire. From 80 to 150.
So like I said, certainly the additional person, let me look at that, Zach. I wonder, Ann, is that one that didn't come down
Oh.
from
and-
4 firefighters to 1?
Can you look at,
Yeah.
can you look at the fire department in front of you
I can.
and tell me what that number was?
On the
Yeah.
on the fire tab?
Right.
On the
It says-
fire tab, the
says
department
one new firefighter, but-
request for 4 new firefighters was 194.
Okay, so
194,712. Which was
did you
a,
hear that, Tom?
I'm sorry. No.
that's okay. In the original request, when there were 4 firefighters in it, that line item was for 194,712.
I see that.
And then when adjusted down, it went down to 149, but it's still I mean, the original request was to add 120,000 cost there. Now,
Right.
we're still adding 70,000, which seems like we're adding more special, regular, replace budget
For one
than the
person than we
cost
would-
of one person.
Yeah, the budget we're in is 80-ish.
And it does look like we've been spending more than that, because the actual spent 21, 22 is 112-ish.
Right, and this budget that we're in with that captain out for several months with rotator cuff surgery, you know, that's $1,000 a shift, like I said, to cover that. And that comes out of that line.
But that's this budget year that we're in,
Yes.
right? And that particular, that's a unfortunate thing that happened, you know,
Yeah.
but that problem shouldn't persist into the next budget year.
True.
Can
Let me look at that.
Yeah, can we take another look at that?
Yeah,
And
that one just seems like such a
report back.
weird outlier that,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it didn't get adjusted down from the 4 firefighter to 1.
It looks like it did. However, in the 21-22 budget, you'll see that even though we had 79,290, they actually spent
112.
112.
that year we actually had 90,000.
No, I'm looking at 20. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm
2021.
looking
Yeah, I
at the
don't
wrong
like the way
year.
that's set up either.
And
You're
now
right.
it always confuses me.
Well, I fixed it on the front page. I
You
didn't
did,
change
it's
anything
very,
else.
and that, but now I go from the front page to the tab,
No,
and
don't
I,
do that.
it turns my head inside out, but it's okay.
So we did overexpend by 20,000 in FY 2022.
I can-
Yeah, 'cause you could see why you would want an increase.
Yes.
Right, because you were overexpending that line, but
Yeah, but it's, I have to agree. Scott, can we look at that?
Yep.
cool,
We'll look at that report back, Zach.
love it.
You're here until Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just gonna make
Could
a
always
note.
fly out to see him in person.
You could.
Yeah, let's meet in Aruba.
We can do that.
I mean, you get an extra 70 grand in that line item.
No, no.
Wait, I wanna go.
Hold on, just capturing.
It's not in the travel line, so you can't.
Higher
Joke.
than expected. Okay, anything else in
that-
fire that we should discuss?
So they,
That line, of course, affects, that addition of one firefighter affects longevity, uniforms.
Yes, there's a whole cascade.
Yep.
The other thing that we talked about with the budget committee was, actually, I think it was Kathy that talked us out of a $10,000 kitchen renovation with the promise of a new fire station.
She
So-
promised that?
Not a promise, it's, well, that's in the works, you know?
Yeah, I've been hearing that since 1990, so.
With no end date in sight.
Is that what's going on in the building maintenance repairs line, or is there something else happening there?
That was, and then the other thing
that's why
that goes
that's
on
back.
there is, and I think it's in the justification, there's two sewer lines that are gonna total $15,000 or $20,000.
If you're
One
lucky.
Is the,
Mine
right.
cost 33, so.
One is an internal line for the washing machine, the other one is the line to the street.
Yeah, that was my expensive one.
I think those two estimates were 15,000, and I think I added 10% just because by the time we get to this in July of 2023, who knows what it's gonna cost. So that's what drove that building maintenance
Okay.
increase primarily.
The protective fire gear equipment line, that one's a big increase as well.
Yep, so that, we've always asked for that to be in the CIP, and hopefully it will make it this time, but we've been replacing 5 sets of gear per year. And with the new firefighter, we had agreed, and I think the budget committee concurred, and
So we
Scott,
did
that
5 replacement and 1 new
5 plus 1,
at $4,500 a set.
yeah.
And that's how much you need to do every year, or just to get caught back up?
To get caught back up, we're gonna replace 5 sets a year.
So we're in a unique situation with our PPE or our bunker gear, if you will, because all the stuff we've been replacing was obtained through a grant 20 years ago. And
It keeps on repeating.
they bought it all, 2 sets for each firefighter then.
Mm-hmm.
And NFPA, which is dictates the longevity of our gear, says every 10 years and then you can't coincide anymore with it. So if we don't replace this every 5 years, what we've been maintaining, it puts us way behind. And like anything, this year PPE's gone up about 20%. So.
We did put that in the CIP, right?
So, but
It's not in the
it's-
CIP, I just
It shouldn't
checked.
be CIP
It
because
should-
it's,
Well, no, it should be though, because how many years does
No.
it last?
10 years.
10 years is long enough for CIP.
but this is something that you would put on a replacement cycle, so you do some every year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it every year, so it's not, it's an operational cost
but you
then.
wouldn't do that much every year,
do that
because you
much
don't
every year.
have that many employees.
I mean, you're talking roughly 100 grand.
Yeah.
If you say 20,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same argument that some people try to make about police cars. They are technically disposable, and we rotate through them, but they're capital.
Well, those are definitely capital.
I mean, bunker gear at $4,500 a piece of gear, it's
It's just like a
Problem,
radio.
So it's
just like a
capital.
computer's capital, right? You don't keep a computer for more than 4 years, but it's capital.
Well, depends.
Yeah. You can probably find like 15-year-old machines kicking around town hall.
Now, that's probably true, but it's still capital in the same way that, some of these gear is getting a little.
Hiring a new
long.
firefighter, every time a new firefighter is hired, myself included, we have someone come in and they're custom fitted for a set of gear. So that fits them like a glove. They can do their job. Their backup set is whatever we can find on the shelves from previous employees that will come close to fitting them. And through time and rotation, they'll end up with a good set of gear as a secondary. But it's very important that we maintain the schedule so we don't get behind.
We had the same conversation about portable radios because
What's
it's
the age on the current stuff?
It's all over the map. Originally, it was bought over 20 years ago with a grant. And then, so you put 10 years out from that, and then all that stuff. We still have some members with that stuff.
How many sets are we talking about? Because you're reducing your call force just because
Yep.
of.
I couldn't give you a number off the top of my head. We have, how many employees we have?
we started with 20 sets, but when we wrote the grant, we were able to get 2 sets for each
You
firefighter.
get 40 sets back then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
so-
what's recommended, so that when one's in the extractor, you still have a set to go on a call with.
So you're trying to do 5 sets a year?
Mm-hmm.
5 sets a year plus a set for whatever new firefighters you're hiring?
That's what we did this year, yeah.
What's thrown a wrench in is all the new employees we've got. We've had a large rotation of employees the last few years, so that's taken the maintenance plan off schedule. We have to put the new employees in new gear.
I mean, we've gotten
You
lucky
have
at
to be measured
times
for that gear.
They have to be measured for that gear.
where somebody leaves and the new person can use that gear, but that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
They should be fitted for it.
Call members get gear as well.
Call members, yes. There's also a new line for health and wellness, which is our NFPA required physicals. That's a new line that totals $6,500. So annually, we do a physical at a medical center in Tilton. We have a contract to do dozens of fire departments.
So physicals.
We should have been doing that.
Physicals are new though, right? The new requirement? 'Cause the PD used to have like a requirement, unless you're a grandfather, like
It's
Steve
not
will
new.
say.
It's not new.
It isn't new?
No,
Just never adhered to it, or,
exactly.
okay.
I'm embarrassed to say. But the good thing is, I know 2 or 3 firefighters in the Lakes region who have identified, colon cancer with those screenings that they do. So and we have a high incidence of that in the fire service. Cancer in general, we're probably 2 or 3 times at risk compared to the general public. So
It's #1 in jobs.
6,000 for that, I think, is
It's
justifiable.
money well spent to make sure we're identifying something early if it's happening.
Which line is that one?
I agree.
I don't know what
Saw it a minute ago.
page it is for you guys, but it's line 4220, 21301 in the fire budget.
213, okay, I hadn't scrolled up far enough. Okay. We're jumping around a little bit here, but what's 4220 500 Hose.
Yep, so we have some replacing to do in our hose testing regimen. We've identified some hose that needs to be replaced. We also, through working with Scott and the budget committee, we had put in there a hose tester, which was, how many thousands?
3,800 was it?
3,800?
3,850.
3,850? Where we do our own hose testing, but when we looked at it, at the budget committee, and Scott had asked us to look at it, we were paying so much overtime to do that we're actually better off to hire a vendor to come in and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that price was like $2,300.
So
We were spending,
so the cost outlined in that is $2,400 for the testing, for a company to come in and do all the testing, and then $3,850 in new hose that was identified, and then the $7,150 in the flow
meter,
meter,
yeah.
which the department currently doesn't have,
We
but
don't
really
have.
should have in order to.
Well, for one, it monitors the health of the pump to know what it's putting out for GPM.
The flow meter, is that something that goes on the truck, or is that something you use it for
You
testing?
can put it on the truck, you can put it on the outlet of the truck, you can also just put it on the stream, so we know exactly what we're flowing in gallons per minute.
Shouldn't,
Which
that's
is
a
important.
$7,000 piece of equipment, shouldn't that be in capital?
That should last a long time, I guess. I don't know what the lifespan would be on that.
I couldn't tell you. It's
We've never had one.
Long enough that it's but it's gonna be a singular piece of equipment, capital investment.
Yeah. We
I mean, it's definitely needed in order to,
Oh,
be able
I'm
to watch the pump,
not questioning the need, just.
But I see what you're
categorization.
saying, should it be capital or should it be in the operating budget?
Yeah, we put it in the operating budget because we didn't want to mess with the capital budget. That was set. The planning board and
CIP.
all of
Yep.
that.
The planning board gave it to us as a tool.
Right, I know that, but at the time, we just left it there, and so that we put it in the operating, it's a needed item. We put it in the operating budget. If you wanna move it into capital, that's fine, as long as that piece of equipment gets purchased, I guess.
And I mean, it's not gonna matter which budgets, because we're gonna purchase it, we would put it in capital for 23, 24, just like this budget's 23, 24. So it's either in capital or it's in the operating, because it's something that needs to be purchased this year.
And I'm guessing that would last, Deputy, 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
So you're
We're also saying it didn't get brought up during the CIP.
talking
So that,
$500 a year?
this is not something that got brought up during the CIP process.
Right.
So if we're gonna add, we wanna make sure that we're really thinking long-term when we're working on the CIP. I think that's what you're
See, correct.
getting to.
Correct.
I mean, it's taken the capital from, I mean, this year, like I said before, it's $1,529,920, and is it worth adding?
Well, but to be clear, this board is going to look at the list of things that have been recommended as capital, and we may not choose to fund everything that's in the list of things that we want to do for capital, right? I mean, maybe we will, maybe we won't. We're gonna have some decisions to make about tax rate when it comes to what we recommend funding.
Right.
But in deference to the process, we left everything alone as it came through.
Sure, I will tell you, though, that capital improvement committee, when forced with the challenge of we should prioritize the items on this list, they said, we're going to defer to the budget committee and the select board because we're not comfortable doing that. And so then we come to here and the budget committee has said, oh, this came from the capital improvement committee, we're not comfortable. So now we've got two committees who the capital improvement plan has theoretically passed through, both of which who've said, I'm not sure, which is okay. It just then, the five of us are going to have to look at that capital plan carefully.
I will tell you that we defer merely because you're the elected official. I mean, I'm happy to sit here, and Michael's happy to sit here.
And that's what they
make
said
some
too.
decisions.
That's what they said
Happy to
too.
do it. But we're appointed. You guys are elected,
Yeah.
so we take that seriously.
Yeah, and that was effectively the argument that CIP used as well.
So I'm gonna ask, does the board want to move this meter into capital?
I mean, if it's capital, I think it should be in capital.
I'm sorry.
Either way, we'll put it in,
If
we'll
it's
put it
in
in
capital, we
capital.
have to have a
So does that mean
lifespan.
it's gotta be a warrant article?
It's line
It'll be part of a warrant article with
right here. It's
all the other
13,000.
one-time capital
And
items.
take it right
It
out?
won't be a separate warrant article.
If they move it to
Are we gonna go
capital,
over
we
that
put it
at
in
a
at 71.
future meeting? To make sure we
They
go-
already have your capital
like that's what's
requests,
gonna
so
happen
they're
now.
gonna do that at one of the next meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, because in that list for you is gonna be like the
Truck payment, the.
truck, the ambulance, save money in capital reserve for ambulance, actually, the deputy chief's fire,
Yes,
that's
Yep.
on that list, the payment for fire engine,
the last year of the portable radio purchases, I think.
last year, the radio replacements, yep, those are the four items that are in CIP
So
for
how
you.
much
So
is-
this will just get added to that list.
I got you.
Scott, how much was that meter? 71?
7,150.
All right,
So we
we'll
taking
reduce-
that out of the operating and gonna go with that capital?
Yep.
Okay.
Shifted across.
What's the lifespan on that? Yes.
Yes.
I would say at least 10 years.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's used probably monthly, but it's not like out there getting beat by the elements. We take it out of the box, attach it, do our testing, put it back away in a very safe box. So as long as no one drops it or
Yeah.
it should
drop
last for a long time.
So we'll put it in that plan with a, with a recycle date of,
15, 20 years.
2035 or something, and
Yes.
then when that plan comes back up, come back in the conversation for replacement. That's part of the point of putting things on the capital plan, is that you say, okay, we bought this thing, it's gonna last us for a long time, but we know we'll eventually have to replace it, and so
Everything's got a day.
put it
Just
way
on the
out,
list.
yeah.
Yep.
And also, we'll be long gone.
Some of these,
I'm sure I
Not
will.
me. And yeah, I mean, I might not be on the board, but
Yeah,
hope
Zach
I'm
will
not
still-
long gone.
Zach will still be on the board.
I'm not on the board, but hopefully still be alive, right? I mean,
some of these items, like the water and sewer bill, we are in the habit of checking with them now when we develop our budget and asking for a proposal on what do you expect we presume it's gonna be an increase. What do you expect the increase to be in the next fiscal year? And so that's where those numbers come from, just so you're aware.
is the increase in vehicle maintenance because of some aging equipment?
Yes. So the average age of our engines now is well over 20 years. We've got a truck out right now with an unanticipated $4,000 engine job, just as an example.
What kind of engine is it?
That is a
Cat, isn't it?
cat.
Yeah, it's
Four
cat.
thousand isn't
Cummins.
much. You could spend 40,000.
Oh, I know. It's just, the point was, it's just another unanticipated. They can add up quickly, as you know,
Yeah.
on trucks.
And I mean,
When we're talking about an $8,000 increase, of a $4,000 payment does give you some context on that.
And I mean, Tommy and Kevin did their due diligence on that. They knew there was a problem with it. They took it to one dealership. One dealership said it's a $15,000 and we'll sell you a warranty with it. Actually had a cat mechanic come up to the station and did the evaluation and said, this is a $4,000 repair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the diligence that's being done when something goes wrong.
Yeah, one company wanted to replace these piston packs, and the cat mechanic that came in said, you can replace them if you want to, but,
That's not the problem.
yeah, it was the turbo.
Terrible.
$4,000 for the turbo.
Tommy, when is the new truck that was ordered last year due in station? Or you might not even have a date.
Well, they projected 20 months, that got moved to 24, so you're
So 2
looking at,
years.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
March of 24.
I found a guy that rebuilt my turbo.
Probably,
He used to be a cat mechanic, but now he has his own shop.
yeah. Is he in the area?
Pittsfield.
Not too far off.
The last item that I see that's a
Give you his name.
significant
thanks.
increase is uniforms.
So.
Is that Zach? I'm sorry.
Uniforms?
One of the things that we talked about, I think maybe it's not clear in the justification, is that the call company's been buying the Class A uniforms for our personnel, what we wear when we go to the parade and funerals, unfortunately, and things like that. And what we had agreed to do is when new personnel come along, we would now, the town would and should be buying those uniforms, not the call department. So they bought the first round a few years ago, Deputy?
Yeah,
For
it was
everybody?
before me. They fundraised and bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of uniforms for the whole department. And then since then, with turnover and all that,
And they do that. They buy equipment. That'd be a good thing for the town report. The call department buys a lot of equipment for the community.
So I'm looking at the note you have in the justification, and it says that this increase includes Class A's for the 4 new employees? Class A's and dailies for the 4 new employees?
Yeah, we didn't update the narrative, Zach.
Okay, so the narrative went from,
4 to 1 is what it should be.
but the dollar didn't change.
Those columns to the right are for 1 new firefighter on my sheet.
Right, but the dollar amount you were requesting for 4 was 8720, and the dollar amount you're requesting for 1 is 8720.
You're right. 422701. Put that on our list, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, look at that together, but I think you're right, Zach. That was one that got overlooked.
What are you gonna
When
do
we
with
went
it?
from 4 to 1.
Went from 4 to 1, yeah.
What are you gonna do with it?
Adjust it down.
We're gonna, it's,
Yeah.
good call.
So it really should come down to 2180.
As an increase.
As a divide,
Yes.
as a divide by four.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Does that work, Tom?
On
Or do you want to
top-
look at that just to
I'd
make,
rather
go
look
back?
at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
But I
reason to do a
think-
slap
I don't
dash,
doubt
but
that you're,
Is that on top of the 87?
No, that would be
No.
8720 down to 2180. Yeah, just let us know after you've had a chance to review it.
okay.
Moving him along.
Any
Keeping him on time.
other questions?
Is that it?
I was keeping him on time.
Oh.
Hold on, I'm just double checking one other number here. It looks like maybe a similar thing happened on the PPE line too, on the 4220-500-01. Because you've got 9 sets.
yeah, did that narrative not get changed?
Yeah, I think because it should be going from 9 to 5,
Yes.
but I think we've still got, maybe we don't. Maybe
There
I'm
was
wrong.
a couple narratives that she hadn't gotten into before I locked it back down. so
Okay,
that
yeah,
could
we
be-
did
Yeah.
ask you about that today.
I would just tell you, just double check that one. It may be right, but
Which one's that?
500-02, is
500.
that what you're looking at, Zach?
No, I'm looking
01.
at. Sorry, I keep switching between two different tabs
What line number?
because I
is
might
it?
be right. It's the I might be wrong on this one. It's 4220 500-01.
500-01.
500-01.
Mine
equipment-
368, Neil.
368.
Yeah, 6 sets. 6 sets is 20.
So 6 sets is 27,000. Okay, it was 40 before and now it's
Yep.
27. Okay, yeah.
That's 5
Nope,
plus
that one's
1.
right.
We just didn't change the narrative.
Yeah, it's just that, but that's fine. I just was making sure that hadn't been
Right,
missed.
Tom, we went to 5 plus 1 at the 4,500
Yeah,
bucks piece.
that's 27,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they'll go through and make a few adjustments.
Yes.
And of course, we don't have a new bottom line yet, but we will come up with that.
Yeah, we should have that by,
And then at the next meeting, we'll just have Scott bring those changes to the board, because we have a full schedule that night as well.
Yes, and the full schedule that night will be review any changes that have happened.
It'll be Parks and Rec,
Parks and Rec,
Highways and Streets, which will take quite a bit,
And everything else.
and all other will
all the
be,
capital,
Yep,
capital will
like
be
the
there.
miscellaneous, and then the capital.
Yep.
yeah.
And Scott will be presenting anything from the selected side.
till we hear.
Thursday.
Requests will be.
Is Scott also gonna
You're all set.
do
I'll
all
bring
of the
that.
miscellaneous?
Yep.
You bring it to us and
Yeah,
go from
perfect.
there.
Do we
Okay.
need to be back here for the capital?
We still got a ways
No.
to go.
Because you've already presented your case, it's already gone through the
You want me to come in Thursday?
CIP. If the board makes
I was a
changes, I'm sure that they'll
firefighter.
let you know. We do have
You were?
an option for one more meeting.
Louis Sleeper was chief.
Yeah, so if
there's
we make any
significant
adjustments to the
changes-
capital, then we'll use that
didn't
one
come to the
additional
reunion.
meeting to just have anybody come in to discuss those.
When
that
was
makes
it?
Save you guys
the
sitting around
only-
here for 3
Elks
hours.
Club?
The only other one for the
No.
fire
Would have, I
department
guess.
It's health.
is health,
I got so many.
Oh,
things.
health.
page 12,
Yeah.
line 526.
Mayhew is gonna pay for your grave
Let's
Page-
let's take a look at that one before we let you all go.
Page 12, line
Yeah, I remember
526.
seeing that old 29 Maxim go to fires.
Line 527, is that the
Said
one?
he remembers it being in a barn.
Health
on Russell-
officer,
He was-
Health officer.
It wasn't a barn.
526.
Which-
This
which
is the
house
one
was
that
Well,
is,
it was
Or
right
barn?
where the parking lot is
Looks like there's a,
on the right. It was a
Our
house and a
apartment-
barn, and they.
the request is 10,000, but the recommendation is
Barn
10,000.
on Russell Street.
Are we,
That was housed in.
we got some
We're moving
crosstalk
on.
happening here. We're moving on to health, the
So
admin health line.
$10,000.
It's
Yeah, that's
$10,000.
Level funded, right?
Level, it looks like it's level funded to me.
Funded.
Covers the stipends for health officer, deputy health officer,
Any
training,
expenses.
training expenses,
Testing.
testing of the river.
Yep.
Spring.
Crystal Spring. Any maintenance that needs to go on at Crystal Spring?
We all feel good about level funding on this one?
Yep.
Thankfully, Joe was able to get that
That's it
pavement.
then.
That was nice to get that
Yeah, it's
paved.
really
That was nice. It's far nicer. It was,
Somebody was gonna wreck
It was
a,
kind of dangerous before.
it definitely was dangerous, yeah.
People were bottoming out,
it's dangerous enough to so
So
many
you're all
people
set with
in
the 10,000.
break your ankle too.
Everybody-
We are, yes. Everybody's comfortable with that number as written.
I'm excited about it.
I think that takes us through the entirety of our budget agenda
Yeah.
for this evening. We have one last non-budget related agenda item. We've got a purchase order to clear. Yes, we're good with you all. And with the budget committee.
Thank you, Mike.
Mark, Mike, thank you for all your work. Appreciate you both being here and
Thanks, you guys.
all the legwork.
You get paid a lot too, don't you?
Well, that's why I stick around.
All over the town.
I'll sign up for another year probably.
I thought it was going to be a little earlier.
All right, one last agenda item. We have a purchase order to look at.
We do have a purchase order. This
Robin.
is,
I will. She's probably watching you from across the highway.
so the board was advised that we had purchased a vehicle out of Claremont for the highway department. It was a Dodge. We had to find that vehicle or a vehicle that we could use in order to retrofit and purchase a plow and wing. We have a purchase order here for $38,706. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking the rest of the money that is available that was in that vehicle purchase line, and then we're taking another $10,500 out of the plow line that we have set up, plows and wings, and so we found the money that needed. So I have a purchase order here for $38,706. We were gonna wait until next meeting, but he really needs that equipment.
He needs to move on it.
Yeah.
Especially now that we're full staff.
And this is all budgeted.
It is all budgeted.
What is it, a 550?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase request for $38,706 for the purchase of the vehicle and plows.
Second. Beat you.
Any discussion? Scott, town manager, how do you feel about this?
It's an absolutely necessary purchase, and we're not gonna find it getting done any less expensive, but we're working with a contractor that we worked with in the past and can fit it in, so I think it's money well spent.
We'll probably need a competitive bid waiver.
And to waive the competitive bid. Add to the motion.
Keep your second on
So
that.
yes, I'll keep the second.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Good.
Aye. Any opposed?
You know, I will say, Zach,
Clear to
that
sign.
Ann and I have been meeting with the highway department on a weekly basis and getting things more in line with how our expectations are on how things get done. So,
Good.
being full staff, we want to stay full staff. We've met the 3 new employees, which have a ton of energy, a ton of experience, and I think will do our department well.
Experience.
Yes.
Great.
Laconia Public Works, Salem Public Works, and Bedford Public Works.
Wow.
That's great.
So,
And Colleen will be here at the next meeting.
Which is on the
Monday.
Monday.
Monday, this
28th.
coming, 28th, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Not bad.
We're only 2 minutes late.
I know.
It's not bad. It's not bad, all
Keep
things
it going.
considered.
So we have a civic student.
Oh, we do. Civics class, suffering through a budget hearing,
We
which
had an
of
option
all
not
the
to.
meetings to
You're a
attend,
trooper.
one of the more painful ones. We probably need to sign something for you.
the truck was 83.
I actually do not have my paper.
That was the purchase order I think you signed like a month ago.
That's okay. If you need me to send an email or something, that's fine.
I was planning on setting up an interview with Mr. Whedon.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And he could sign that.
I love it. That works great.
That's good.
We're gonna
Yes.
communicate tomorrow, and we'll do something either tomorrow or Wednesday to get it done before Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
When's it due?
Okay, I signed it. I didn't.
Okay,
want-
so you have a little bit of time.
Signed
Good.
it under
Good,
duress.
good. Well, thank you for being here. Hopefully it wasn't too overly painful. And with that,
Motion
to adjourn.
Second-hand picture.
I'm not sure which one of you got it.
I got it by a hair.
I'll second it then.
All right.
Write
so-
it down however you see fit, and
Okay.
we'll all approve it.
8:03.
And we're adjourned. Oh, wait, all those in favor? Aye. Now we're adjourned.
No, I want to stay here all night. To an auction.